This is Pop by Culture. You're watching Marvelous Monday, and tonight we're discussing X-Men First Class.
You have the chance to become part of something much bigger than yourself.
What do you know about me?
Everything. A new species is being born. Help me guide it. Shape it. Lead it.
Time for the tour.
You have no idea what I'd give to feel normal.
You want society to accept you, but you can't even accept yourself.
Should we have to hide?
Tomorrow, mankind will know that mutants exist. They'll fear us, and that fear will turn to hatred.
Not if we stop a war. Not if we risk our lives doing so.
We have it in us to be the better man.
We already are.
It shall be the policy of this nation to regard any nuclear missile launched from Cuba as an attack by the Soviet Union on the United States.
They're just kids.
No, they were kids.
Ready for this?
Let's find out.
The cost of freedom is always high. No one can foresee precisely what course it will take. One path we shall never choose. That is the path of surrender.
Listen to me very carefully, my friend. Killing will not bring you peace.
Peace was never an option.
Welcome back to Marvelous Monday. You might be asking yourself, X-Men First Class? I didn't think that was in the MCU. And look, you're right. Technically, it's not. However, it kind of is at this point. Now that Marvel's been bringing in the X-Men universe, I figured, why not include it? Because we've got some good films on the docket, and why not talk about it? So tonight, I brought my YouTube Avengers back together. We have Dolan, our comic book writer. We have Nadia, our expert in makeup and hair. And then we have our secret weapon, Shield Wall. What's so secret about it? Well, you'll just have to tune in to find out. But I want to do the same thing that we did last month while discussing Captain America, the First Avenger. I want to go around to each of you and see what your memories of this film were versus what your experience was rewatching it. Did it improve? Did it get worse? What did you think? Nadia, I'm going to start with you.
Okay, I'll go first. 2011 X-Men First Class. I liked it initially. I remember seeing it in theaters and thought this wasn't too bad because I didn't know at the time if it was a reboot or a continuance of the other X-Men movies. So I actually enjoyed it. I thought it was pretty cool. Rewatching it though, it drags. I feel it just there's certain scenes that could just be sped up a little bit or dialogue cut or editing a little bit better because I think this could be under 2 hours easily.
For sure. Dolan, I'm going to kick it over to you. Do you share that same sentiment? Did you watch this and go, man, it dragged, or did you have a different experience?
I had a completely different experience, so each subsequent week, I've been watching this because, look, cat's out of the bag. We've kind of delayed this recording. And so I've watched this a few times since then, and willfully, because I actually really, really enjoyed this film. And one thing I consistently realize now is that Michael Fassbender is a star. This movie made him a superstar. And it is very clear that I would love to have a Magneto solo film. If this film was just Michael Fassbender as Magneto in the '60s, and I would be all over this, watching this probably every day because it's awesome. Because in my opinion, he should have been James Bond, but it never happened. But I had a lot of fun watching this film. Again,
Nice. Shield, what about you? What were your thoughts that you can remember from when you first saw it versus rewatching it for the show?
Well, that's the thing is it came out in 2011, so
Mhm.
I had just got a big promotion and I was busy at work, and I went and saw it and I thought it was okay, but I think there were so many other superhero movies that were coming out at the time, like X-Men movies. Now this is my perception. I know they were years apart, but the way that my mind works, they were kind of all back to back, it seemed like. And so I might have been a little bit of oversaturation for me with, look, it's another reimagining of these characters. But I thought it was a lot better the second time watching it than I did the first time. And I didn't mind the introduction of all the characters as the movie went along, where they took the time to properly introduce them and get you know, who the characters are, and they spend time interacting. I did feel like the very end of it, though, just kind of went to warp speed real quick because they kind of had to wrap things up. And I agree with Nadia. I think with some different editing, they could have smoothed it out instead of have this big fat bell curve in the middle. They could have like kind of, you know, flattened the curve a little bit, just so to say. Wait, is that going to get us taken off of YouTube because I said flatten the curve?
Oh.
You're fine. You're good. Flatten the curve.
I meant, but overall, I enjoyed it. I thought it was a good movie, and Dolan's correct. The Michael Fassbender had some good acting in it. Some people in it were really good. Even some of the side characters were well acted. So,
Agreed. I will say I'm kind of a mixed bag. I remember 2011 and going to watch this, and I remember I didn't have high hopes because the last two X-Men films that we had gotten were X-Men: The Last Stand, which I greatly disliked, and then X-Men Origins Wolverine, which I also I probably disliked it even more than Last Stand. So I was a little hesitant. I remember really liking this when it came out and thinking it was awesome. And even, you know, going into the show, there are aspects of this film that I love. There are characters that I love. And I'll say Michael Fassbender's Magneto for me is by far the highlight and the standout. But for whatever reason, I just remembered it playing out a little differently. And I'm kind of with Nadia. And I don't know if it was a situation where I'm tired. We both had a very busy week this past week. So I don't know if I was just tired and that's why it made it feel like it was a bit of a trudge to trudge through. But I felt like it was a little slow at first for the first hour, and then it kicked it into high gear, and I was like, okay, this is what I remember. But overall, I still think positively of the film. And yeah, well, I guess we can get into breaking it down. So for those of you that haven't seen the movie, you should probably go watch the movie because we're going to give away some spoilers. But as a reminder, this was a bit of a reboot, which is interesting because it did and didn't reboot in some ways. But it was promoted as a reboot. But this took the X-Men back to the 60s and kind of showed how the X-Men came about, how they were formed. And to do so, it focused on two characters predominantly, and that was going to be Charles Xavier and Erik Lehnsherr, who is Magneto. And that's kind of where I want to start off talking tonight are those two characters, because those are your two polar points in this film. And it really kind of sets up an interesting situation because for all intents and purposes, I think if you look at this film, you can say it's a prequel, even though they discussed it as being a reboot. And that for me always kind of makes me nervous because it's one of those situations of, okay, is determining how these people became Professor X and Magneto, and is determining how the X-Men came about really that good of a story to tell. And I have my thoughts on this that I'll get to in a second, speak to why I thought this worked. But I kind of want to hear from each of you as far as the aspect of choosing Charles and choosing Magneto and kind of revolving the story around them, what were your thoughts? And I'll kick it to Drew first because he's our comic book guy.
Yeah, the relationship between Magneto and Xavier is one of those great ones, and right now it's not so good in the comics. It's pretty terrible. But and because how they're played, it's just two sides of the same coin. They have their different approaches to like how the mutant society should be. With society, should it be integrated with it? Should it be on its own, superior? And I love that aspect of it. But in this movie, it's great because you see them as friends. Granted they're frenemies later on, but just they're both friends, and you see where they're coming from their perspectives of life. You see their polar opposites of life, where they came from, which is great. And I really love the dialogue scenes between James McAvoy and Michael Fassbender, because I don't know what it is, but watching those two, it's you see charisma. It's just magnetism, literally, no pun intended. It's just you're hypnotized. You want to hear them continue to talking, and just that when Fassbender says peace was never an option, it's like, oh shit, this is really damn good. I felt their relationship was perfect. I mean, getting a younger version of Patrick Stewart and Ian McKellen, they did a terrific job. And honestly, I don't. If they were to reboot this again, I don't see how they could go 3 for 3, because getting this twice in a row, that's a miracle.
I just since we're touching on the actors, and we'll kind of go a little bit through each of their character stories and how it's presented, but I think that was one of the things that I was most nervous about, because you're coming off 3 X-Men films that had Patrick Stewart and Ian McKellen playing these characters, and they're both such strong, theatrically trained actors that can bring so much gravitas and depth to their scenes. And I remember seeing James McAvoy in The Last King of Scotland, and I just remember thinking, I know he can act, but I don't know if he's Charles Xavier. And it's in a lot of ways he wasn't, but he was, and we'll touch on that in a bit. But then Michael Fassbender, I didn't really know anything about, so I was kind of coming in blind. I remembered him being in.
You didn't know him from Jonah Hex? You never saw him in Jonah Hex, that masterpiece?
I don't remember him from Jonah Hex.
Nobody remembers Jonah Hex.
But he did. Inglourious Basterds was before this, correct?
Correct. Yep, he was in that.
Yeah, I remembered him like briefly for that, but I was like, I don't know, like this is a big role. But yeah, like they kind of stepped up to the plate in ways that I did not think they were going to be able to. And much like our discussion for Captain America, the first Avenger, I think that made this movie as successful as it was, because I think had they not gotten the characters right and the actors right for this, it would have been dead on arrival.
Sorry, Josh, I would add one more thing. The chemistry between James McAvoy and Michael Fassbender is similar to what we got Picard and Gandalf going on with the last couple X-Men. Like that chemistry too, you have to like, regardless of what you think of those original X-Men movies, their chemistry was great, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
As Drew's saying. Yeah. So to recapture that, even if they both played the characters respectively, to have that chemistry together, I don't see them, as you said, being able to capture that a third time if they reboot it again between the two sets.
So I do kind of want to touch on the beginning character arcs of each of these characters, and we'll start with Erik Magneto, because he's the first person we see. And you know, Nadia, we were talking backstage, and you made a comment how this is pretty much like scene for scene a retelling of his introduction from the original X-Men movie from 2000, and it is. You know, they're at the camp, and he's separated from his parents, and he's trying to get to them, and he discovers he's got his power, or his power triggers. It, you know, bends and just completely warps these metal gates, and it's a super powerful moment. And then it kind of expanded on this to then show more of young Erik, and we get to see that, you know, the Nazis were really working to figure this out, hone in, determine how they could use this as you know, a tool for them. In some ways, they've got individuals with abilities and powers. This is probably the first that they've seen of this, and they're trying to test Erik to use his powers again and see the limits of his powers, and it wasn't really turning out to be successful. And it leads to the scene, which is in my opinion, a heartbreaking scene. But you have Kevin Bacon's character, which is Sebastian Shaw later, but he's going by a different name here, and he puts Erik under pressure by bringing his mother in. And this is the first time that Erik's seen his mother since they were separated. But instead of just using that to kind of help, you know, inspire him, he kind of puts this threatening mode of like, I'm going to count to 3. And on 3, I need you to move this coin. And if you do not move this coin, I'm going to kill your mother.
Alles ist gut. Alles ist gut. Alles ist gut.
3.
Shield, I wanted to touch base with you real quick because you do have a background in military, and Drew as well. But for you, what did this scene kind of symbolize or mean to you, and how much did this for you kind of help shape maybe what you didn't know about Magneto, or maybe kind of connected some dots of you going, okay, I kind of understand this character as an adult now based on watching this?
Well, my thing with him is if I understand how the mutant powers manifest in the comic books, it happens around puberty time, and there are a lot of stories in the comics of how the manifestation. Some parents are repulsed by it, or society is. Sometimes they're accepting and understanding, but it's the whole point of having the facility that Professor X eventually creates to train and house the mutants. Well, Erik is put in a very stressful situation. I mean, he's in a, concentration camp for one, but now he's hit puberty, so his powers are manifesting. One thing that I don't think that the movies ever address is where these mutant powers come from. At least in this movie, they don't. So he has the powers, and obviously, if we know our history, that the scientists from that era in that country were very interested in doing experiments and trying to push the bounds of science and medicine on humans by doing human experimentation. So having Erik with these abilities fall into their lap is like a perfect for them. It's right in their wheelhouse of what they want to do. So you have the Kevin Bacon character using these forceful techniques to try to get him to manifest his powers. And he already knew that he'd pulled the gates down. So he knew he was under pressure, which is why he did that when he brought his mom in. So when he does kill him, it does get him to trigger his powers. I mean, he crushes the helmets of the 2 soldiers that were holding his mom, and like trashes the entire building. I did think it was kind of interesting that the doctor wasn't afraid at all. Like, I don't understand what kind of power he might have had over Erik, because I don't know what stopped him from just killing everybody there and then just flying out of there on his powers, other than he didn't really know what his powers were yet, I guess. But as far as an instrument to kind of move the story along, introduce you to the character, and kind of show you that this is a pivotal point in his life that's going to cause him to do things later on in life. This really sets up his views on life, and so he's a tragic character in a lot of ways.
Yeah, I completely agree, and I know that's kind of become a bad phrasing. People don't like to hear their villains being tragic. But for me, if there's a character that it definitely works with, it is Magneto, because it shapes so much of what you're discussing, his worldview. I will say there's a moment in this too that I thought was super subtle, and some of the way they filmed this and acted these scenes out was not subtle, but while his mother was there and Kevin Bacon's character was counting to 3, they had Eric's mom saying, "That's good. Like you're good. You're good." And it's interesting because it's almost played from an aspect of, I don't know if the mother actually believes Eric caused that fence to change. Like she witnessed it, but I think for her, it's got to be something that's so unique and so out of the ordinary, and like there had to be other things that happened. Whereas as Kevin Bacon's character, he is a mutant, so he knows that there are other people with powers, or he suspects it anyways. So that gives him reason to want to pursue it. But the mom kind of plays this knowing like, you're not going to move this coin, and I know you're not. They're just going to kill me, and this is one of the things they're doing to. And I'm thinking like her as a Jewish woman living in a concentration camp. That's got to be what she's thinking. Like this is a way for them to hurt you and torture you as a child. Is they're gonna try to get you to do something you can't do, and it's okay. I know you can't do it. And that just tone of it's good, but her almost saying like, I know you can't do this. For me was incredibly heartbreaking. But yeah, Drew, this definitely sets up the kind of what we know of Magneto and what we expect, and it kind of we eventually kind of see it transition roughly 20 years into the future, 15 to 20 years in the future, so that we're in the 1960s. We get to see Erik as an adult. And we see that he is on a pursuit of vengeance, trying to track down Kevin Bacon's character.
La détention de cet or est illégale. Je devrais appeler la police.
Ne jouons pas ce jeu.
Où vient cet or?
D'un ami qui m'a chaudement recommandé votre banque.
Je vois. Vous connaissez nos conditions, monsieur.
Oui. Et vous devriez connaître la mienne. Cet or est tout ce qu'il reste de mon peuple. Fendu de leurs biens, arraché de leurs dons. Ceci est le prix de leur sang. Et vous allez m'aider à trouver les salauds qui ont fait ça. Oh. Touchez pas à cette alarme. Je veux Schmidt. Klaus Schmidt. Où est-il?
Nos clients ne donnent pas l'adresse. Nous sommes
pas ce genre de banque. Des plombages en métal, hein? Pas en or. On a peur que quelqu'un vole les vols. Merci. Ça me ferait tellement plaisir de vous tuer. Alors, croyez-moi, si vous prévenez qui que ce soit de mon arrivée, je vous retrouverai.
I love it. We see that he's got his own Pepe Sylvia wall up in his hotel room.
Yep.
It's a Pepe Sylvia wall. He's got boxes of Pepe. But I just love you see him. I love that he's laying in bed. He is magnetically moving that coin between his fingers. I love that scene, and just doing the small things with it, and then flinging it just to kill Johann. I think it goes by Johann, Kevin Bacon's character at that time. But I love Bond films. I love the Bond novels, and Michael Fassbender is the physical representation of who Ian Fleming saw as what Bond would look like. And seeing him in a suit in the 60s. I'm just mesmerized. I'm going with this guy. It doesn't matter if this plot is stupid. I'm just like, yeah, I'm sucked in. And just I love seeing him use that Nazi gold in that bank, that, you know, and he's pulling out that guy's metal molar, you know, the lightest, you know, of energy. I love that stuff. And I don't want to get to Argentina scene just yet, but that gets even better. But man, I'm just sucked in. I'm having so much fun with this guy, just following him, seeing what he's going to do, just how far he's willing to go to get the truth, where this guy is at.
Buenas tardes, caballeros.
Buenas tardes.
Calor, ¿no?
Sí.
Una cerveza, por favor.
Deutsches Bier. Claro. Ja, ist Bitburger. Schmeckt gut, ne?
Das Beste. Was hat Sie nach Argentinien verschlagen?
Ach, das Klima. Ich bin Schweinebauer.
Ich bin Schneider. Schon seit meiner Kindheit. Mein Vater hat die schönsten Anzüge Düsseldorfs gemacht.
Meine Eltern kamen aus Düsseldorf.
Ach.
Ja.
Und wie ist der Name?
Sie hatten keinen Namen. Ihr Name wurde ihnen weggenommen. Schweinebauern und Schneidern. Blut und Ehre. Ja, was würden Sie gerne zuerst verlieren?
Wir hatten unsere Befehle.
Also Blut.
Quieto, cabrón! ¡Vamos, schieß!
Let's just say I'm Frankenstein's monster. I'm looking for my creator.
But
in that scene in the bar in Argentina, it really reminds me of that scene in Inglourious Bastards. You know, where he's in that bar, and it's like, all right, who's going to make the first move? Who's going to go first? And I love it, just that ease he has. You know, getting the knife, killing the one guy, the other, just having a drink of the beer. I love it. He just, oh, you good?
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, finishing his beer. That was the best part of it. But yes, sorry, Drew. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, you're good. Yeah, it's just yeah, and he's going to have to take that swig of beer and pushes back his hair. He's going to get back at this, you know, look professional. I love it. It's a great scene, and you know the tension is building. You don't know what's going to happen, and it really reminds me of Tarantino, and that's pretty much why I like that scene.
Yeah, that scene in particular, and I'll bounce to Nadia and Sheldon in a second with this scene, because for me, this is one of the scenes that sticks out in my memory when I think of this film. I love how awkward and uncomfortable it is as it starts, because he goes into the bar, he greets the guys, but he greets them as if he knows them, even though he doesn't, and it's kind of awkward. And he orders a beer, but he orders a German
you're
beer.
From there? You're from Dusseldorf? I'm from Dusseldorf. Yeah, Big Farmer Erik.
And they keep it all kind of like one word answers and a little awkward, and then he like takes a drink instead of continuing the conversation, so the others take a drink, and they're just like chugging it, but you can tell that the two former Nazis were like, there's something odd going on here, but they can't figure it out. And Michael Fassbender, goes and joins them at the table, and they're discussing, oh, I'm from there, and he kind of reveals his hand that he's a Jew, and then he has that line, which I think is a great line. But he mentions that his family was murdered by pig farmers and a oh gosh.
Someone who makes garments, I think. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, that's right. That's what it was. And it's just like, oh, okay, this is where this is going. And that's when it becomes very clear, like, he's not here to be friendly. He's here to do some damage, and things kind of escalate. So, Nadia and Sheldon, I'll pass it to y'all. What did you guys think about the scene? What did it mean for you? And is there anything in particular that stood out for you with this scene?
Just for me, just his time taking to finish the beer when he's got the guy's hand. Which, by the way, that's a pretty good practical effect there. I don't think that's CGI with the hand, the knife in, and he just takes his time, just drinks the beer, chills out. Also shows that, like, I don't know where his moral compass is at this point, right? Where's his humanity? He doesn't have any. He just doesn't care. He's just on a mission to get his revenge, and then he'll deal with the consequences later. But this is what he's trying to do. So that's the most memorable part for me.
Yeah, and Nadia, that's why it really reminds me of Bond, because what he does in that bar is very much reminiscent of what James Bond would do. And that's pretty much why I think I may like it so much, because it's like I'm thinking
I've only ever seen Skyfall, so that's my Bond reference. Sorry,
you're missing out.
One of my goals this year is to watch all the Bond movies. So yeah.
Yeah, start at the beginning and just go chronologically.
Yeah.
Yeah, for me, it shows, so it mirrors with the so you have the hotel scene where he's flipping the coin, then he goes to the bank, gets the information, and then he goes to Argentina, and we have the bar scene. To me, what all these scenes represent is that this is his sole focus. He's not interested in doing anything else. He's not worrying about anything else. This is his focus. So he's going to do whatever he needs to do to get to his end goal. And he spends a lot of time thinking about it, planning it, going through the plan over and over. Plus, he's very capable, right, because of his abilities and things. So he's not really scared of anybody. And because of what he went through at the camp, and subsequently in some time periods we haven't actually seen yet up until this point, it's really shaped who he is. And I don't think he really has a lot of empathy for people because of that. So he has no compulsion about killing these people. Plus, of who they were in their past lives, I think a lot of people could argue that he'd be completely justified just killing them. You know what I mean? Just for justice's sake. So I thought it was a pretty powerful scene. It sets up that he's capable, he's willing to do things to get the job done, to meet his ends. And it also, again, feeds into how you're going to perceive his character later on as he develops into Magneto. And again, there's a propensity in modern comics and movies to make every villain some kind of sympathetic villain. But I'm also a big believer in knowing why somebody is doing something. What's their motivation? Other than, I think that only like certain things like demons and devils can just be purely evil. There's got to be some other kind of thing behind it if you're a human being, that are doing things. Now, are there evil human beings? Absolutely, definitely. But what's the cause and effect to that? And I think this does a really good job of illustrating that.
Yeah, I think you clicked on a key point here. It's explaining why he thinks the way he thinks, why he's pursuing what he pursues. And it gives that context as opposed to just trying to make him sympathetic. It's trying to make you understand his reasoning for going about this. And yeah, I think there is some form of sympathy there, but I think more so it's just to kind of set up and establish his drive. And that's what I really appreciate with this, and kind of getting to watch unfold. But even in this scene, it looks cool too. I mean, the bartender pulls a gun, one guy pulls a knife, he gets the bartender to shoot the tailor. He stabs the pig farmer's hand with the knife, and then sends the knife into the bartender and brings it back and stabs the hand again. And then, like Nadia was saying, like the guy's there in pain, and he just finishes his beer and then uses the gun to shoot the pig farmer and kill him. It all just kind of unfolds in a really nice way, and I mean, it's entertaining. Definitely a little dark, but entertaining.
Can I add one thing?
Yeah.
Sorry. So it's interesting to me that we get this scene and then we get into Xavier's party scene, right? So to me, it shows that Magneto, I'm sorry, has grown up. He's a grown up. He has adult decisions, adult choices. And then we go to somebody who might not have intelligently grown up, like maturity wise. Like the maturity between the two are complete opposites based off their background. Yeah.
There is a grounded maturity, and it's interesting because, and we're gonna go ahead and move into Xavier now. But they both they share so many similarities and so many differences, but in some ways they both grew up on their own. Eric Magneto's his youth was he grew up alone because everything was taken from him, and then Charles grew up alone because he came from an affluent family that his mother couldn't even be bothered to deal with him. It was always like a nanny. And it's a quick throwaway line when we first see Charles, but we meet him as a kid, and we don't know it at the time, but Mystique sneaks into the mansion to get some food because she's hungry. And then when Charles hears it, he goes downstairs, he finds her, and she transforms into his mother, and he is kind of talking with her, and then he's like, "Who are you? My mother would never make me a sandwich or make me chocolate milk or whatever it's going to be. She doesn't set foot in the kitchen. She would bark at a servant to come do it for her."
Mother, what are you... I thought you were a burglar.
I didn't mean to scare you, darling. I was just getting a snack. Go back to bed. What's the matter? Go on, back to bed. I'll make you a hot chocolate.
Who are you? And what have you done with my mother? My mother has never set foot in this kitchen in her life. And she certainly never made me a hot chocolate. Unless you count ordering the maid to do it. You're not scared of me? I always believed I couldn't be the only one in the world. The only person who was different. And here you are, Charles Xavier. Raven. You're hungry and alone. Take whatever you want. We've got lots of food. You don't have to steal. In fact, you never have to steal again.
My thing about Mystique and her, so if you watch the very first movie, right, she's just kind of there. You don't really get that understanding of the connection between her and Xavier that this movie now creates, right? That level of they grew up together. I think at one point maybe had feelings for each other, or one of them had feelings for the other and it just never manifested. You know what I mean?
Right.
They definitely would have gone to lengths to help each other out. And then how it ends up later on, where they're on opposite sides, and I'm talking about like the first movie, you never really get that feeling at all that they ever knew each other. And
Which is weird watching this
Yeah.
because, like, wait a minute, so
Right.
they knew each other?
Yeah,
she's
and
almost
they knew each
right.
other, and it wasn't just in passing or for a little bit. They literally grew up together.
Yeah,
I mean, I would put my money that they banged, but you never.
Well,
I think they were married at some point in the comics too, like
or
one-off
something,
or
right?
some
So
weird-
their relationship is way deeper than the first movie or set of movies indicates, which was a little jarring to me. But I was like, okay, this is the movie they're going with. I dig it, and which later on makes that fracture between all of them even much more profound.
Agreed. And I will say, I think everything that they decided to do with Mystique in this film was solely there to allow for the fracture later on, to have it have more impact and weight. And am I a fan of it? Not necessarily, but did I hate it? No.
She's my least favorite character in this whole entire.
Really?
And look, if
Really?
we're
Yeah.
being on, if we're being I've got to go ahead.
I think
Drew.
it's mostly Jennifer, the actress portrayed.
That was
Like,
my question. Was going to be, who is your favorite Mystique as far as actress goes? Who do you think?
Rebecca
Romaine.
Romaine. 100%.
Romaine.
Yeah. To me, and I understand this is supposed to be younger Mystique, so it's not the sexy, like, ooh, kind of like Rebecca Romaine was in the first couple of movies, like the mystery to it, right? Get it? Mystique?
Right.
Anyway, that was my really bad joke. And I know she's supposed to be younger here, even younger adult, but she comes off awkward to me half the time when she's on screen. Like, she's uncomfortable in that makeup and costume. The actress,
right?
Jennifer Lawrence, where Rebecca Romaine kind of like, hey, I'm Mystique, embraced it.
Maybe that's her as the actress reflecting the character. The character isn't comfortable with herself because she's still trying to figure out who she is. And it's that there's that great scene later on with Magneto. He's like, no, I want to see the real Raven. No, I want to see the real you. And it's like, so maybe that whole time it's her. Maybe I'm devil's advocate. We're going back on 15 years. Maybe she was putting in type of like the character's uncomfortable, or maybe is this the actress that's uncomfortable? I don't know.
It may have been a little bit of both, but I'm kind of with Drew on this one. I agree that she came off as uncomfortable, and I do feel like she was uncomfortable in the makeup. Look, she's already said in interviews she hated the makeup, she didn't like it, and that's why they tried to write in the contract later on for her to be in the makeup less. But I feel like it worked from the perspective of this version of Mystique for this film. Again, kind of like Charles, grew up in a nice mansion with a silver spoon in her mouth. Now, how did she manage that? And why didn't the parents ever say anything? And
that's another thing too.
Where did this little girl come from?
Did Charles use his powers to kind of make his parents think they had a sister? Like,
but they grew up in this brother-sister type role, but it's very clear that they also grew up with Charles. And I don't think he necessarily did this in a negative way. I think he was trying to protect her, but it's very clear that it was instilled in Mystique. Do not show who you really are. People are not ready for this. They're not going to accept you. They're not going to accept it. Just don't. Whatever you do, don't. But I think also because of Charles being so intelligent, he kind of just looked at her as the kind of kid sister that he has to take care of. And then we get to see that Charles kind of wrapping up his college years, and I personally loved this because I've always thought of Charles as being a little bit stuffy because he's the old bald head dude that's in a wheelchair. But it was fun to see James.
Josh, speaking of which, real quick, for a bald guy in the comics, he gets more ass than Wolverine.
That's true, though.
It's ridiculous.
Yeah, but it was fun to kind of see him as a player. Like, he's up here throwing lines out. Like we first see him with the girl with the the eye, the 2 colored eyes.
The heterochroma, whatever. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
And he's got his line. You can tell he's a little drunk and everything, and that's going on. And then Mystique ruins it because she changes one of her eyes on purpose, trying to get some attention, and it leads to things.
Right. And see, that's what I'm saying. I really think she wanted that relationship to be a little more than it was.
Because I think she, she clearly didn't have parental figures of her own, but she saw someone that was at least doting towards her. And, I think Charles's perspective was brother-sister type thing, but she was potentially experiencing someone that loved her, even if it wasn't on a romantic level. That was probably the first time she'd ever experienced that. So for her, it makes sense that she'd be drawn to him. And she's probably thinking, why won't you look at me in the same way? And we kind of know to a degree it's her mindset is, you're not looking at me this way because I'm blue and I'm a freak and I have to hide, and I'll never be good enough because who I really am isn't what you're looking for. When in reality, I think for Charles, it was just like, because he had grown up taking care of her, I think it was impossible for him to look at her any other way than sister. So interesting there.
But she was also very secluded too, because he's the only one that knows she's a mutant, right? And they weren't around other mutants. So it's not like she had a dating pool to be like, hey, I can turn blue. You can, I don't know, stretch your hands. Like we should hook up,
And they have a throwaway line too about her, sometimes struggling to keep her form, and that, she may have been more secluded than what we realize.
Well, that was the thing. Like, not knowing what the limitations of her abilities were. Can she just stay in a certain form all the time? Or is it like, does she have to come out of it every 12 hours or something for a certain amount of time? If she feels pain, does it will it like ripple and stuff or whatever?
If she falls asleep, does she suddenly turn blue?
Right, exactly.
Yeah. Does she go back to?
Or you know what I mean? Like, or if she's having relations with somebody, does that, does that have some effect on her? And that might be why she's so lonely and disconnected, is because she really can't, because they would figure out that she was a mutant.
Yeah,
probably, because it's kind of in a line as when she's lifting the weights.
That's what I was just gonna say.
If you're using half your energy, maintaining your figures. Imagine if you were like in your full.
Oh, right, yeah. But I mean, I'm sure there are some dudes out there that would have been down with it, but
I just want to know why the wig got worse throughout the movie, and then also worse throughout the movies, like the continuous of her being in them when she was in Mystique. Full appear, that the wig just got worse each time.
Well, it looked like for Rebecca Romaine, I don't think maybe she had a wig, maybe they dyed her hair, I can't remember, but I also feel like it was gelled,
dyed her
more
hair and gelled back. Yeah, I'm looking at photos of it.
And then I know with Rebecca Romaine's her body makeup, it was pieces of prosthetic, and I want to say it was like 400 and something pieces that they put on her body. That way, when she moved, it looked like it was actually her skin moving. And then they did different airbrushing techniques but with Jennifer Lawrence, I know to make it easier, because I think Rebecca Romaine had like 6 hours worth of makeup. So she would show up at like 2 a.m.
The difference between Rebecca Romaine and Jennifer Lawrence's makeup was Rebecca Romaine, you're saying, right, it's like pieces of prosthetic and airbrushing. So she's completely nude. Like, she's completely nude with like a couple patches, where Lawrence wore a blue bodysuit.
Correct.
That was the base.
Yeah.
So a little bit more covered up.
Yeah. And it looked like her headpiece was like the headpiece and a wig, which I think made her head look massive and
very square. Not feminine, very square look to her. Yeah.
And Jennifer Lawrence was also still younger at this time, so she still kind of had the baby face going on a little bit.
Yeah, she hadn't done Hunger Games yet. She was still just on Winter's Bone, and
which was another really good film she did great in. Yeah, it makes sense why they would put her in a major.
Looking at it almost looks like a forehead prosthetic piece that is attached to the wig.
Yeah,
because it's very heavy, especially here around the brow area. and then there's a couple pieces on the cheeks, and then it's just her painted. But you can, in some points, I was looking and like you could see the line of the bodysuit a little bit. Like like again, Rebecca Romijn's probably looked better and flowed better because she was nude in a sense.
Oh yeah,
this body, where this bodysuit didn't give that same kind of flow to it.
Right. And again, that's the difference when you have an actress versus a model. Because when Rebecca took this role on, she was a model. She didn't really act, which is why she didn't have a lot of lines and stuff in that first film. And when they got to X2, I think so many people were enamored by Mystique, and they thought
she was
Mystique
amazing
ended
at
up being
X2.
cool. Yeah. So they gave her more, and then she just rocked it, which also is part of the reason why they wanted to make Mystique such a prominent character for these films. Like, people responded so well to Rebecca Romijn as Mystique that, they wanted to elevate that character for these films. And then Jennifer Lawrence was coming off did she win the Oscar for Winter's Bone? I feel like she won the Oscar for.
Yeah, she won.
So.
Yeah.
So
just looking at this, I'm sorry, I'm just so intrigued because I have them side by side, and with Rebecca Romijn, especially with the side pieces, they're spiked out, so there's like texture and levels to it. With Jennifer Lawrence, and I'm looking at the shot where she's in when she changes in bed in front of Erik, and it's very flat. The scales are very flat, one-dimensional almost.
Now she's wearing a bodysuit, right?
Yeah, underneath that. So it's probably a bodysuit and then the prosthetic pieces attached to the bodysuit.
So did it have like a flap or something? I mean, how do you go to bathroom in that? You obviously can't take the whole thing off.
Yeah, I do know later on, like in Days of Future Past, and on like it became like a zip-up suit, from what I understand.
Mm-hmm.
And they just, so she could.
Because I just assumed this was like a body stocking kind of thing. You just kind of like a giant leotard or something that she got into.
I'm looking at Rebecca Romijn's costume as well, and the pre-painting of where they just put the prosthetics in all of the naughty bits. And then it's just her bare skin before she's turned blue. It looks pretty cool.
And they just spray paint her blue.
Yeah.
Yeah, they airbrushed her.
Oh, yes, they did.
And I think they had like a sponge technique that they did over that to help give the skin some texture. So it didn't just look flat blue.
Yes, they did.
I know. Dolan's like, I would have helped sponge her.
The thing is, like, so look, I was a very young man when X-Men came out. Rebecca Romijn was all over the magazines and on my bedroom walls. And so watching the behind the scenes of her putting on the makeup, yes, let's just say I watched that a few times. So, yeah.
I had to sit through that 9 times.
I'm fast forwarding through it right now, and it's interesting. Not only is there like big prosthetic pieces, but there's little like tiny itty bitty pieces that they use to probably cover seams and stuff. This is great. Sorry, we should be talking about Jennifer Lawrence's Mystique. No, I'm sorry.
It's worth bringing up because every time you see Jennifer Lawrence in this film, anyways, because I think when you move to the next film for her, Days of Future Past, which we'll get to way later, it just looks weird. You saw Rebecca Romijn for 3 films looking really good.
It looks unnatural. Rebecca Romijn looks natural. This looks unnatural.
It gets worse and worse, and that especially the last one, her wig looks way too red, almost just like it's obviously almost like you went to Spirit Halloween and bought this wig.
Yeah, well, and that was the one where she was like, I don't want to do this makeup. I'm done with this makeup. So she was really kind of fighting back. But it's like you knew what you're getting into, like you knew. But we get this interesting dynamic and relationship set up with these 2 characters. And we kind of get to see them expand. And there's a point where we're back in a bar again, and we'll touch on how this is set up later or in a bit. But another character is kind of introduced to us, more McTaggart, but she's coming to visit Charles Xavier because he specializes in mutation, and there's a reason why she's looking for him. Again, we'll talk about this in a little bit. But it's yet another moment of us seeing, I'll say party Charles, Charles being a total Chad, or at least to the best of his ability. And, goes straight to the same pickup line. Oh, look at your hair. It's auburn. This is a mutation. Da 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 da. You know, mutation. And he's just like going on the spiel. And Moira's like, okay, yeah, that might work on these like college dorm girls here, but that's not going to work on me. And then leads into like, you know, hey, we've got a mission for you. And this is kind of where you get to see Charles and Erik as adults, unexpectedly kind of being put on the same path to go after Kevin Bacon, who is now Goldman Shaw. It's I don't know. It's just a fun juxtaposition. And if you're a fan of the comics, you kind of can see where it's about to go. So you're like, oh, okay, I'm down. Like, all right, I see we're gonna start crossing paths. But yeah, a good time. To get to the Moira McTaggart of it all, or actually, Drew, let me ask you this. We know that, you know, the depiction of Mystique, not the greatest. Were you okay with how Charles was depicted here? Did you like seeing younger Charles in this kind of party phase? Because I know some people have had issues with this, and I personally thought it was great. But
yeah, me too. I completely agree with it. I mean, and like you said, he was a young man in college in England. It's like, yeah, he's going to have fun, and I like that. I like seeing a young man unwind when he's in college because it's true to life. He just graduated. He just got his PhD. Of course, he's going to have a drink or two. I would be too.
Yeah.
Jesus.
Of course. Oh yeah.
Plus, he can use both of his legs.
Exactly. And he has a full head of hair. He has a full head of hair.
Full head of hair.
Yeah. He's a doctor. He's a doctor with a full head of hair, and he can walk. So he is on cloud 9 right now. So there.
Also, fun fact: James McAvoy actually shaved his head for this one prior, without knowing that he actually was going to have a full head of hair. So he actually has extensions inputted into his hair as he was growing out for this movie, because he was just so excited that he got the part, and he's just like, yeah. So and
wow.
He shaved it for the second one, which fits better.
Matthew Vaughn would be like, "What did you do?"
Yeah, like, oh, we didn't really need you bald for this one, my guy, but it's okay. We'll put some.
We're gonna get to that in later films. Yeah. So to kind of bring the pieces together, we're gonna shift to Kevin Bacon's character, who is now being referred to as Sebastian Shaw. He is the head of the Hellfire Club, which here is essentially just a casino in Las Vegas, and he's running it.
It's a gentleman's club. It's a go-go club.
Yeah. Okay. So he's there. He's living this life now. He hasn't aged really at all, but he does look differently. He's kind of lost the Germanness of his look, and is a little more. Yeah, he's lost the accent. He's kind of like.
Well, then again, we got to remember when he was giving that speech to Erik in the beginning. He says he didn't agree with the Nazis. He didn't agree with what their plan was. So I never saw him as an actual Nazi. He was being honest with Erik. He was letting his cover down. Like I really don't think he was a Nazi, and that was just that was a ploy.
Agreed. I think, I mean, because in many ways, which they don't really get into this, but for all intents and purposes, it's almost like he's immortal because of his power. Like he doesn't age. So we don't know how long he lived prior to this. We don't know, when his history or when he actually had gotten his powers. Now, Drew,
maybe he ran into Logan in the Civil War. He ran into the Creed and Wolverine. He's in the background. Yeah.
Is he an actual character in the X-Men comics?
Yeah, and he actually is. Somebody? Yeah. So why don't you go ahead and kind of give a little bit of background on Sebastian Shaw, Drew?
So Sebastian Shaw, he is the leader of the Hellfire Club, which we do see in the movie, the Hellfire Club, and he is able to absorb energy. And so it can be anything from like kinetic energy in motion. It could be optic blast energy. But the fact that he uses it to keep himself younger, that was added for the film. That really wasn't in the comics, but it's just a way to make Kevin Bacon look the same because hey, it's Kevin Bacon.
Yeah.
So and I can go with it. He's absorbing energy. The energy is rejuvenating his cells. There you go. So yeah, he's a pretty cool character. He's a pretty cool villain, and the Hellfire Club is pretty awesome too. And I love seeing the Hellfire Club here. I did love it. Hey, we're in the 60s. It's the Hellfire Club, so yeah, it's gonna be a go-go dancer club. We got ladies in lingerie, and hey, we got the White Queen, Emma Frost, and she was wearing her lingerie all the time. And January Jones, she looks amazing in this. She is literally White Queen from the comics in the movie, and physically at least.
Okay,
physically.
there we go.
Okay. So different powers in the comics.
No. Yeah, so let's just say
Characterization,
White
how she
Queen.
acts.
Yeah, character. Yes, let's just say characterization in the comics. White Queen is a little more mentally tough. Let's just say she's willing to push back on Sebastian Shaw in the comics. Here,
Okay.
you don't really get that much. Like you could see her
At all.
portraying Sebastian Shaw in the comics, not here at all. Which is pretty.
So
kind
she's
of a
more
shame.
submissive in a sense in the movies versus what
Oh,
the
way
comics
more.
portray her.
Yes,
The-
absolutely. Yes.
Okay.
For the comics, she's way more bold and she's way more kind of independent. So she's not like here. She's very much Sebastian's lackey. In the comics, she's a free thinker, independent. She's gonna kind of do what she thinks is best for her, and she's kind of looking to lead her own thing in a way. But yeah,
Right, right, yeah.
I've read her in passing because I read some of like House of M and stuff like that. I again not very deep X-Men comics other than the TV show everybody grew up with, right? In the early 90s.
But even in the cartoon series, and even in the cartoon, like that second season when he brought in the Dark Phoenix saga, you could tell that she was manipulative behind the scenes. She was a power player. Here, you don't really get that, which is kind of a shame. But physically, at least, yeah, she looked just like White Queen out of the comics.
yeah. Did it bother you that she wasn't British? I just, for me,
I'll say this: if it was Alice Eve, it would have been perfect because she has that. She can bring that British. She would have.
Yeah,
perfect.
she
I don't know
can.
what if she dropped out. Yeah. Oh yes.
Yeah.
Oh yes.
I-
But it's a shame she didn't. She dropped out. But yeah.
Yeah, I hate that she wasn't British just because I feel like so much of who Emma Frost or what Emma Frost's personality is kind of that British stiff upper lip type of mental. Like I think so much of who she is as a person and an individual and how she speaks and how she responds is so British that I was like, oh, like, and for me. As great as January Jones looked, I thought she was a wet blanket in this film. Like everything she did to me felt uninspired. So I was like,
I don't
it's
remember
just
her
killing me more.
scenes as much.
Well, I remember her scenes, but I don't
me
remember
too.
her
Yeah.
lines very well. But you know what she felt like to me? Like she didn't have as much agency as she should have. She was almost what do you call it? She's a henchwoman.
Yeah.
Yes.
Like a standard henchman person that you got, that you really, if you're the leader, they're not like she was supposed to be pretty much his right hand person, right? But
yes,
you kind of got the feeling that, I don't know, maybe to him she was disposable.
Yeah, and I think it goes to show like that 60s mentality, that 60s element where the men are the power players and the women, are still kind of beneath the men. We see that with both facets, with Laura McTaggart, with the CIA, and Emma Frost with Sebastian, had her kind of more or less held back, held down. And like, because there's that scene where Sebastian, he says to her, "I'm looking at the most beautiful woman in the world. Just drink me some ice. Go give me some ice." It's like, okay, clearly that's where she's at still.
The 60s version of Make Me a Sandwich.
Yes.
Does she fit here though? Like I know that they were trying to avoid doing mutants that have already been on screen to kind of give it a fresher look, but does she fit for that role? If
100%.
Would a better mutant fit for being Shaw's right-handed man?
No, it's always been White Queen. It's always been her.
Okay.
And it fits, but yeah.
Would she have been a better villain at a lead villain, do you think, if they had switched?
I honestly, if things had played out the way they had, I would have seen her trumping Sebastian, like thwarting him, betraying him to come out on top. Like he wouldn't have been the final baddie. It would have been her.
Gotcha.
Agreed.
Instead of at the end where she kind of switches sides because Shaw's gone. So it's almost like she's just doing it for survival reasons, not because she's just trying to trump or lead. Okay.
Yeah,
Yes.
I like, if anything, she's an opportunist, but not so in like a desperation way. Like she's going to play her hand, and she's going to play a good hand. But if she gets in a situation where she realizes she's not going to come out on top, she's going to look for a way to survive. I guess if that makes sense. Like that's where the opportunist elements come in, and I wanted to see more of that. Like there's a line in a TV show called Dollhouse where there's a character that goes, "Oh, you played a good hand," and I think her name's Olivia Williams, the actress, but she's British, and she says, "No, I played a terrible hand very well. There's a difference." And for me, I've always thought that sums up White Queen. Like, no. I played a bad hand extremely well, and that's kind of her personality and her swagger to a degree. And I just hate that wasn't in this character in this film, because I remember when I found out White Queen was in it, I was excited, and then when I saw what she had kind of been like degraded down to, I was like, okay, well, all right. But yeah, you've got Sebastian Shaw, you've got his right hand, the White Queen. So, and he's looking at it in some ways as this king and queen element. But they're running this gentleman's club, but it's operating in different ways behind the scenes, which the club itself is really freaking cool. Like, surface, everything looks normal. You got that one booth that spins, and it leads.
You guys were there in Vegas, right? That's where you guys were hanging out, right?
Yeah.
That was our Wednesday night.
I'm sure it was like, had something to do with bootlegging back in the day, and they just used it for other means. But this is where we really get introduced to Moira McTaggart, because she's a CIA operative, and they're investigating. I can't remember if they're actually investigating Shaw, if they're just trying to investigate the General Landry and see what he's going to do.
They follow the general, and they know something because they knew the club. Like, a lot of these generals like to hang out at the club, and they're just kind of looking at who's observing, who's going in. Then they see the general, and they're like, "Oh shit, we got to go in now."
Right. And this is like leading up to the whole Cold War incident and everything. So you've got all those elements going on politically at this time. But I personally took issue with this, and I'll revert to Shield and Drew for this to see if I'm out of line. But I kept thinking, why is the CIA doing this on U.S. turf? Why isn't it the FBI? Am I wrong?
No, that's according to the rules. They're not supposed to operate on U.S. soil, but it's a comic book universe, so you know what I mean? Like, are they a special part of the CIA, or they just don't care? I guess to me it didn't really matter.
Okay,
I wasn't really stuck on it, because I was like, man, they got a woman as an operative. Come on, man. It's already fantasy for the 1960s. So might as well just stretch it a little bit more.
Fair. That's fair.
No, but so if you want to talk about that, we're always like bashing, oh, you guys, you nerds are always bashing women. Well, we just talked about how we wanted Emma Frost to be a better character and be represented correctly, more strongly than she actually, like she actually is.
Yeah.
So
I guess my thing is, I just remember thinking, and I think it every time I see this, why didn't they just say she's FBI? Because to me, that would have...
Because in the comic book world, CIA is way cooler.
That's fair.
Than FBI. Yeah.
During the 60s, right? Yeah, maybe.
Yep. Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
And to be fair, I think at that time period, they kind of maybe wielded a little more power than they do now, as far as like politically and stuff.
And not having checks and balances. All
right.
right.
They hadn't borked so many things up yet. There weren't so many scandals
that we know.
Right. Because they were still a fresh agency. They had really just been brought up. So everything regarding them and their stuff was new, and that was right around that time when the famous quote came out about, like, there's a deposition about the Central Intelligence Agency. A senator asked a member of the CIA, it's like, how come you don't say "the" in front of CIA? And the guy responded, "You don't put 'the' in front of God."
Oh, wow. Well,
sounds like it comes out of an X-Men comic pretty easily.
Yeah, fair. Anyway, you've got Moira McTaggart. She's CIA. She sees a chance to try to get information, because
played by the amazing Rose Bryan, by the way, who is fantastic. I love her almost everything she does.
Agreed.
Straight out of Damages. Yeah, she just done the show Damages with Glenn Close. Which is really good.
I recommend Physical on Apple TV. She plays a 80s housewife going through anorexia, or whatever it's called, and she's like a workout fitness model during that time when the videos came out. Highly recommend it. She's great in it.
She looked
Josh
good
is
in
going
this
to edit
film.
that out.
Yeah. I think she's in Neighbors as well, right? The
Yeah, she's in both of those.
Yeah.
And
She's
Jim
a
to the
good.
Greek.
I think she's an underrated actress. But yeah.
Yes, 100%.
But yeah, she jumps on this opportunity, so she strips down in her lingerie, and just thank God she's got her sexy lingerie on tonight instead of her standard 60s housewife.
Granny panties.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Not laundry night.
Yeah, she's got her garter on and everything, but she infiltrates the Hellfire Club, and this is where she learns about mutants for the first time, because she gets to see Emma Frost turn into her diamond form. She gets to see Riptide make his little tornado. She sees Azazel teleport and then take Landry away. But she also learns kind of like what Shaw is trying to do to the smallest degree. And that's what kind of puts her on the path to find Charles Xavier, because this isn't just a like an espionage type situation anymore. We are now dealing with people who the government would consider are weapons of mass destruction in and of themselves, and no one knows that this is going on, at least as far as she knows. So she's got to get this information out. So
I don't ask for favors, Colonel. I express my expectations. So let me say it again. I expect you'll reconsider.
The only thing I will reconsider is having another glass of that delicious champagne.
What the hell did you put in my drink?
You're thinking of running, hiding. We'd find you, Henry. There's not a fortress in the world that could keep us out.
Magnificent. Isn't she, Bob? Genetic mutation. The evolution of the human genome. Where's Azazel? We don't want the Colonel to be late.
Comrade.
This now puts all of these people on this path to Sebastian Shaw. So we've got Moira going to get Charles to get him onto it. Erik's already on his kind of like witch hunt for him. But because of this situation, like Charles gets brought in with Mystique to the CIA to try to present, hey, these people are out here. There are individuals who have this genome that has mutated, and people are getting powers, and we need to prepare for this. And I love the scene because they're kind of like, yeah, all right, nice little magic show, great presentation. Is this the part where you pull a rabbit out of a hat? Like, okay, good job, get out of here.
The advent of the nuclear age may have accelerated the mutation process. Individuals with extraordinary abilities may already be among us. Thank you very much.
McTaggart, you really think that some crackpot scientist is going to make me believe in sparkly dames and vanishing men? You just bought yourself a one-way ticket back to the typing pool. This meeting is over.
Please sit down, Agent McTaggart. I didn't really expect you to believe me, given that all you could think about during my presentation was what sort of pie they were serving in the commissary. It's apple pecan. I haven't been entirely honest with you, love. I'm sorry. You see, one of the many spectacular things my mutation allows me to do is that I can read your mind.
I've seen this before in a magic show. Are you gonna ask us to think of a number between 1 and 10 now?
No, Agent Stryker, although I could ask you about your son, William, who you were thinking about, which is very nice, but I think I'd rather ask you about the Jupiter missiles America are currently placing in Turkey.
He's a goddamn spy. You brought a goddamn spy into this facility.
How's that for a magic trick?
Best I've ever seen.
And that's kind of what settles everything of like, okay, you can get your team and you can start doing this research so we can figure this out. And this is the formation of the X-Men coming together. But we get Oliver Platt's character, who, by the way, doesn't even have a name.
Isn't it
I was
Men in
pissed.
Black?
Yeah, like his character in the script is Man in
I'm
Black.
I'm an Oliver Platt fan, and we only get Oliver Platt for literally 5 fucking minutes in this film, and I am so disappointed. It's like, really? That's it? That's all you get for Oliver Platt? I couldn't believe it.
Yeah, but through this, we get to meet a young scientist that's working with the CIA named Hank McCoy, and anyone that's a fan of the comics knows that it will eventually become Beast. So we get to see Hank, and we get to introduced to Cerebro, or at least the early stages of Cerebro. And this is kind of how the formation of the X-Men start coming about. So Charles and Moira kind of know they're going to need a team, so they start looking for people that they can recruit, amongst other things. But let's go ahead and kind of get into this.
I have
We got a question.
For Drew.
Yes.
Yeah.
Drew, that is not the real Beast origin story, right? In this movie?
No.
Okay.
So,
Didn't think
well,
so.
with the thing with Beast, Hank McCoy, it was more than just his feet. That's the one thing I hated about this film. Like, they made it just his feet. I'm like,
yeah,
come on. But it's Nicholas Hoult, I understand. Fine, whatever. But he was a genius, but he was more of a bulking male looking, like he looked like a full-on linebacker. But he had, increased strength and agility, like a human beast or whatever. But he worked for a corporation. I think it was like the Roxxon Corporation or the Brand Corporation. And he was investigating some corporate espionage, and he took this formula that let him become a furry beast to do some investigating. And he waited too long. He got stuck in that form, and now he's stuck as the blue beast now. But I understand why they did what they did with Mystique and her genes could be the cure. It's what it is. What it is. It's the movie tying things together. I can go with it. It's fine. And at least they explained how he got the blue fur. But
right.
I can go with it. It was through a chemical, which was in the comics. It was through a chemical. So
yeah.
Okay. I was just curious.
The way they did it in the movie made sense. It wasn't like, oh, come on, man. Like
corporate
you see a lot of
investigating corporate espionage.
Yeah.
Well, no, but what I mean is in the movie using Mystique's like genome or whatever to try to make a thing that all made some kind of sense. Yeah. So
Is every X-Men movie, I can't remember, is there always a somewhat underlying storyline of trying to cure being a mutant, trying to be human? I can't remember.
There are stories. There are stories about it they've done, but it's not really the overarching story.
No, it's always like a side story or some sort of.
I would say always. It's not always, but like there are stories where they've done it. Not many. Like one was the Gifted story by Joss Whedon and John Cassidy, where the doctor has allegedly come up with the cure, but what it was. But I forget.
They took that comic story and that's what they put in X-Men: The Last Stand. I think more than anything, there's always been this undertone. Mutant can mean different things. It's an allegory for different things. And that's kind of what it's always meant to be. Is people always feel othered one way or another, and that can make you feel lonely or disconnected. And that's kind of what they touch on. Is you've got. It's this kind of inner mutant thing, kind of like in the comics, it's with the Morlocks, but You know, the Morlocks are usually the ones that look like the freaks. Like you can see their mutant, like their mutation. With a lot of the X-Men, you can't necessarily see their mutation. They look normal and they just have these abilities. And it's almost like it was setting that up of like, you know, my life would be easier if I didn't look like this. So Mystique is able to transform herself, and Hank in this film is trying to hide who he is. So he's like folding his feet up so he can fit in normal shoes. And kind of hiding in that way, in that respect. But I think it's more so just showing like, hey, it's not always the easiest life, and there are people that wish that they just had a quote unquote normal life. And I think that's the takeaway there. But they do kind of start their path onto things, and the first person that they kind of meet and intercept is actually Magneto, because they go after they get the go ahead to go after Shaw. They decide to go after Shaw. It just so happens Magneto is also going after Shaw. So you have these two missiles kind of, you know, come together against this villain.
You can't. You'll drown. You have to let go. I know what this means to you, but you're going to die. Please, Erik, calm your mind.
Get up! Calm down! Just breathe! We're here! Who are you? My name's Charles Xavier. You were in my head. How did you do that? You have your tricks, I have mine. I'm like you. Just calm your mind. I thought I was alone. You're not alone. Erik, you're not alone.
And this is where you start this brotherhood relationship, because I think Erik has always been so alone and always just been hell-bent on what he needs to do that he's never even considered the possibility of life with other mutants. And there's a line that he says here where he's like, I didn't know there were more people like me. And this is something that Charles has grown up knowing, because he knew Mystique and he found Mystique and then probably met a few other mutants along the way. But this is where these two come together. So did this scene do anything for y'all? 'Cause I remember watching this the first time and thinking this was a nice, powerful moment of having someone come in and kind of be like, hey, this isn't worth it. It's not the time. Just pull back. Like, you're going to kill yourself. Instead of doing that, give yourself a better shot another time.
So I liked the scene. I thought it was interesting how he was like destroying the ship, trying to get to him, and they're like, "Oh, we got a secret sub inside. We're out of here." And of course, you know, that's very comic book. You know, I got a secret sub inside my boat. Yeah, exactly. Who doesn't like? Yeah,
not just that, but like out of James Bond movie, because once again, Michael Fassbender looks like James Bond going on this damn boat. And
right.
Yeah, absolutely go with this.
And him not wanting to give up holding on to the sub, even if it was going to kill him, again shows you about some of the character that he has. And so yeah, I thought it was a good scene. Overall, I didn't have any issues with it. I thought it was believable, and how they interacted, you know, afterwards was very believable too. It wasn't like I wasn't sitting there. There's so many things I see these days where I'm just like, oh, come on, man. It was very contrived, or whoever wrote it obviously didn't know what the hell they were doing because it didn't make any sense or anything. This wasn't like that at all. You know, so.
It kind of goes back to what Nadia was saying earlier, the relationship between these two actors and what they're able to convey. It just starts right away here. From Charles to go ahead.
That scene could have been complete shit if the two of them didn't have chemistry. Because you
Oh,
go
yeah.
from that to finding the rest of the mutants to kind of picking
Mhm.
up where the movie goes. So you don't
Yep.
actually get to see McAvoy and Magneto and Xavier like build that relationship, right?
Right.
You get little pockets, but because these two have such good chemistry with each other, they already feel like they're brothers by
Yeah.
the second time they're talking to each other, just the two of them.
Yeah, and that's kind of the key here, and you know, it works so well despite how quickly it happens. Just and it's believable too, because you've got Charles that gets into his mind just for a split second to understand what he's feeling, and this desire to save him. You know, because for Charles, it's like this is another mutant, this is another one of my people, we need to save them. But also Erik learning, I'm not alone. There's more of us. I have a brother in this fight. And I think that's kind of, even though they don't realize what their goals are a little separate, they see that they're moving in the same path. And that kind of whips them in. Now, Nadia, you mentioned this is where we get to meeting the X-Men. And yeah, they build Cerebro. They start trying to find mutants. They start recruiting mutants. We'll go over these individually in a second when we get to like the power montage. But you essentially have Charles, Moira, Hank, Magneto, and then the man in the black suit. Finding out these characters, it still pisses me off. And they end up tracking down Havoc, they track down Banshee, they track down Darwin, they track down Angel, and we get a wonderful little cameo here. Who is the cameo, Drew?
We get Mr. James Howlett, aka Logan, aka Wolverine, very briefly.
And when they go into the bar and try to talk to him, what does he say?
Go fuck yourself. I love it.
I love it, but go ahead.
Watching that, I go, there's nobody that's going to be able to play Wolverine other than Hugh Jackman. Like, there's nobody. There's nobody. Even just watching it, there's nobody. No way.
I think it's possible, but they have big shoes to fill.
Yes,
because Wolverine's kind of a little bit of a departure in some ways than how he is in the comics. But yeah, it was the thing that I loved about this is the internet wasn't quite what it was now, where you know you had scoopers and all these stuff and just everything getting revealed. So his cameo had been kept quiet, and also like I don't think any of us were expecting an F-bomb. So it just made if you could do anything to make Wolverine feel like Wolverine within like 5 seconds. That's it. Just have him drop an F-bomb. You're like, fuck yeah, that's Wolverine, man.
Not just that. So. He drops an F-bomb, he's drinking, and he's got a stogie. That is Wolverine. It's like, you got the trifecta right there. I can go with it.
Yep.
I love it.
What I liked about that scene is they were just like, okay, and left. They didn't try to talk to him. They didn't try to like push the point. They weren't like, oh, come on, man. Let's try to sell this to him. They were just like, if I remember right, they just kind of looked at each other and shrugged and were like, all right, we're out of here.
Yeah. And to be fair, if you walk up and you're like, hey man, how's it going? And someone's like, yeah, fuck off. Then you're like,
well, because I assume that they would have had a little bit of intel on him, right? Like the CIA provided it or something, to where, hey, this is this guy. He's got these kind of abilities or whatever. This is why you want him on your team. And then and you know what he's about a little bit, and then he says that. All right, maybe I don't want to continue poking this bear with the stick.
The problem is when you start incorporating when they meet Logan, and then you start thinking of X-Men Origins Wolverine. You try to line up those timelines.
To me, that's the biggest problem with this movie is they're trying to, I don't want to call it retcon, but they're trying to say, hey, this is what they were doing before, but it's incongruous with what's actually happening in the first movie because you're like, okay, so these people have known each other for 40 years now, but you don't get that impression, especially with Xavier and Mystique. Like that's a big fail right there.
Full disclosure, X-Men Origins Wolverine is not in my headcanon, and we won't be covering it. So just throwing that out there. Maybe once we finish everything, if people are like, what are you doing? Keep it going. We might, maybe, but that's probably going to be a hard no.
I'll be off that night.
See?
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm not putting myself
that's going to be a
bed.
hard no.
Is that the one with Ryan Reynolds with his mouth taped shut?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Yes.
Is that
Yeah.
the one where he's in Japan or at some point in some?
No, that is the
No,
Wolverine.
that's the Wolverine.
That one's bad too.
Is that the one with this one with Silver Samurai, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's like a director's cut that's a little bit better, but there are elements of that movie that are really good, and then it just kind of goes to shit.
To me, it's everything is perfect until the third act. When we get to the third act,
Yeah.
right outside the we fights the Rock'em Sock'em robot. I'm like, I'm out. I'm done.
Yeah.
It's just you had a perfect film, then you do this. No.
Another
If
film,
X-Men-
another story, but carry on.
If it came out now, I don't think it would be as recognized as good as it is because of the adding Wolverine and then all the time jumps, because now everybody's like, oh, everything's a multiverse. Everybody's a different timeline and stuff. So I think they could get away with it back in 2011. I don't think they could do it now without having to retcon and explain things differently instead of just doing a fan favor and adding Wolverine into a scene. Because I honestly think that was just fan favor.
It was.
Oh,
and
yeah.
it totally, which people, I recognized exactly what it was, but I was still thankful for it. I was like, oh, that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
And, because they didn't overdo it. They didn't, nowadays, who knows what they would do with it. You know what I mean? Like probably have some woman come up and be like, why are you sitting in my seat? Or something, and who knows, but it was direct to the point.
Ooh.
And then, it was cool.
If they made this now, you would get your girl boss, a White Queen.
Oh,
no,
yeah, but
not
she
the
would,
way we want her.
Yeah, but not the way we want. She'd be obnoxious and like stepping all over men and stuff. And she's not the character.
She wouldn't be in that lingerie either. Scantily clad clothing either.
So yeah,
Played
we
by
get we get the recruitment of these characters. They take their time and kind of giving you like a brief idea of who they are, brief kind of description of what their powers might be. We'll go through the X-Men individually in a second, but I want to save that for their training montage and discussing the training montage. Because before we get to that, we kind of get to a split. We've now got our plot set up. We've now laid out our characters, and we're an hour into a 2-hour film at this point. And it feels like the plot itself is just now getting started. Yes, Nadia.
I know we're going into the X-Men, but we didn't talk about the mutants that were with Shaw or
That's what we're about to do. We're gonna discuss.
We're grouping them. Okay.
Yep. So we've had the recruitment. The kids, I'm saying kids, haven't been trained yet, but everyone's kind of been brought on board. And then they're all at the facility, the CIA headquarters that they're operating out of. And there's a tip because, Shaw's kind of working a plan. There's a tip that comes up that he's going to utilize to try and separate the X-Men. And Shaw's supposed to go to Russia. Instead, he decides to send Emma Frost on her own to go speak with the general. And you've got Charles, Magneto, and Moira, that they all go off to pursue that, thinking Shaw's going to be there. And really, it's a setup. So it's kind of twofold. You've got the scene that takes place in Russia where they go visit, and you get to see Magneto be a total badass again. But you get a confrontation between Emma Frost, Charles, and Magneto that, in my opinion, made Emma look like a total chump. But
she got punked.
Yeah.
Yep.
Drew, would you say that Emma could probably hold her own against Charles and Magneto, at least better than what she did here?
Physically, absolutely. She's a freaking diamond. I mean, she should at least knocked one of them out. She should have knocked out Charles at least. It didn't make sense. Like, really? That's all you're gonna do? You're just gonna jump and they're gonna catch you? I mean, what?
Yeah.
What? No.
Yeah.
No, it didn't work. Yeah.
Well, that whole scene had a bunch of problems. First, they infiltrate with a truck filled with soldiers wearing American uniforms. Like, what are you doing? Yeah. It's a covert operation. How are you behind it? I mean, it didn't make any kind of sense at all. That part, I was like, okay, that's even. I don't even think comic books would be that silly. Maybe they would, but yeah, that just made no sense to me at all. And and then the rest of it was okay, I guess. But
yeah,
that part was weird.
Yeah, it was a little silly and hokey. I liked the bit where Charles like uses his ability, so when they open the back door of the truck, they don't see anyone there. Like that was a nice
really
moment.
cool. That was a very Charles Xavier moment, demonstrating his power.
And they were gonna withdraw because Shaw wasn't there, and Magneto's like, "Nope, that's his right-hand woman. We're getting her. She has information. She's useful." And he decides to like just say screw protocol. And he does this one-man like infiltration, which again looked pretty fucking badass because you got barbed wire coming out and slapping people up, and then Charles is trying to help him by taking over the mind of some people, and it was a nice moment. But then you get to that whole thing where Emma's got the Russian general having his whoopee time, or so he thought. It was just
I can go with that. I can go with that. That was I like that scene. That was me. Yeah.
But I was expecting a bigger showdown between Emma Frost, Charles, and Magneto, and I can believe Emma Frost going into her diamond form and realizing he's a little bit stronger of a telepath than I am. I don't want to fight that way. I can at least block him out. And now I'm a physical threat. And in her diamond form, she takes off running after, like, to try to plow through them. And they both just like hook arms and like, do a little hoedown almost and just drag her to the bed. And they tie her up and start crushing the diamond. I was like, fuck this, I'm out. But yeah,
CGI with the bed frame thing looked awful. It did not.
Yeah, it wasn't great. But that scene happens, and that's how they get Emma, and she kind of gets taken into custody because of that. Now, the cool scene, and for me, in my opinion, this is where I was like, okay, this right here is where the film starts. So you've got Shaw, and he's got his other lackeys, which are Azazel and Riptide, and they just destroy the CIA headquarters. That base, they just show up and just completely demolish it.
What was that? Oh no, something doesn't feel right.
No news of Shaw?
Not a peep.
Not even through that back channel?
What is that?
We have an intruder in the main atrium.
Where are the mutants?
You take another step, I'm gonna put you down.
Of course you will. But where do I find the more evolved people?
Send backup now! Get back! Get back! Do not leave that room! We're under attack! Shoot! Shoot!
Where are the mutants?
Put that man down or we will open fire!
Stay here, my ass! Let's go! Get back! We can help! We can help!
Yeah! Quick! You want the mutants? They're right through that door. Just let us normal people go. We're no threat.
Is Azazel related to Nightwing? Nightcrawler.
So okay, yeah. So the reason why Josh
Sorry,
is
not
laughing
Nightwing.
is because well, yeah, I know, we know what you meant. So originally, he was meant to be Nightcrawler's father. He was going to be one of his fathers, but then that got retconned again. How his you don't want to know Nightcrawler's birth now. You don't want to know how bad it's gotten. Josh knows what I'm talking about. But honestly,
he's one of my favorite X-Men.
Yeah, me too. And what they've done to Nightcrawler recently is horrible.
Shameful.
But yeah, it's very much shameful. And yeah, Azazel didn't really appear until 2003. There's a couple characters in this film that didn't appear until the early 2000s.
Really? I thought he was a OG character.
Yeah, I thought so too.
Yeah.
No, it's like
so did they use him? Sorry, did they use him because they couldn't use Nightcrawler, or just couldn't?
I think it was a tie. It was supposed to be like a little tie-in and a nod to Nightcrawler. Just
right.
Okay.
Well, also Nightcrawler wouldn't have been a villain in this. Maybe wouldn't have been a villain.
He'd been a baby. He would have been a baby at this stage.
Oh, that's right. That's right. Yeah. And now Riptide. Yeah, I'm getting him confused with somebody else. That would spin and like throw shurikens and stuff, and they were so powerful they were able to put shurikens through Colossus's chest, even though he was changed into his metal form. I remember that from the comics, but I can't remember if it was Riptide. I thought it was. It's like a guy that would spin and do like tornadoes and stuff.
No, that was Whirlwind was one of them.
Oh, that you're right. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. And there was a Avalanche, but Riptide is another one, very obscure character. I honestly forget when he first appeared, but I do know for a fact that Darwin and Azazel popped up in the later 2000s. Darwin didn't show up until like 2003 when they were doing the Deadly Genesis. It turned out he was one of the first X-Men. I gotta hate that story, but just
okay.
It's shocking.
Riptide looks
the slider.
Most of the time, Riptide looks like he's going to prom in this too.
Yes.
And I don't think that's a single line in this film. Like, if there were ever a character that was just a lackey that you know is just going to be cannon fodder, it's him. Like, you know for a fact.
At least I thought Azazel looked cool. Like, he had a cool, like, 60s, like, villain suit on or whatever.
Yep.
You know?
Azazel looked cool. His powers were cool. He was deadly. Like, they nailed it.
And another new character was Angel. Angel first appeared in the Grant Morrison X-Men run.
Yep. She's the one with the bug wings or whatever?
Yeah, correct.
Okay.
And I this is where I'm going to say she was the worst performance in this film.
She
looked like she was stoned. She looked like she was
I'm
stoned the entire time.
Zoe Kravitz. That's why.
Is that her?
Which is sad. Yeah, that's
her.
Okay. I was going to say, well, she played a stripper really well then.
Yeah, she did a little too well. Yeah,
that was the best thing she did was playing the stripper. After that, she was just like low energy. But yeah, stoned is a good way of putting it. Yeah, this is
Angel's a weird name for that character, by the way.
It's such a weird name.
It should have been like Bumblebee or
Isn't there already an Angel, like a well-known X-Men named Angel too? Yeah,
correct. But trust me, it gets weirder in the comics with her and a guy named Beak, who is actually like a bird named Beak, and it gets weird. Not gonna lie, things get weird.
When I saw that they had incorporated Angel into this movie, I was like, why? Like, why?
You could take her out and she doesn't do anything. Like
correct. Yeah.
Same as Catwoman in the Batman. Zoe Kravitz plays the same character. Catwoman in the Batman could just be cut out. This could be cut out in X-Men. We're good to go.
Okay. Yeah. But yeah, you could have had any other like X-related character and it would have been fine. Like you could have just picked someone that was like one of Sinister's like Marauders or something and had her just something other than what they did. But anyways, for me, this is where the tone of the film changed. So you kind of get the bad guys are really making their presence known. You lose characters. I think this is where the benefit of having Oliver Platt play the Man in Black comes into play, because you would have thought, oh, he's going to be here for the entire film, and he gets killed here. So you're like, oh shit, no one's safe. But they confront the kids, and Shaw's got this whole thing of like, you're with us or you're against us at this point. So decide what you want your fate to be. And to be fair to them, like, they haven't seen anyone this powerful. So out of the X-Men, who we'll go over in a second, Angel decides she's going to go with them. And then you have Darwin, who decides he's going to step in, and it's kind of like a gambit, but he steps in to try to maybe be a foil and say, yeah, I'm going with you. And is like Alex now, who's Havoc. And they tried to attempt to fight back, and it's very clear just within seconds it's hopeless. Like, there is no chance here. But kind of as a warning, Shaw's kind of like, okay, you want to try to pull, one up me. This is what happens if you do. And he just obliterates Darwin, whose ability is to overcome anything. He just completely obliterates him, and we're down one X-Men at that point. Like, Darwin's gone.
Are we really though? I would say he's another character that I'm just like, okay.
I thought he had potential, but he wasn't around long enough for him to grow on you. And actually, most of them weren't, and then, yeah, I think, I don't know, maybe Havoc had the most growth out of all of them, potentially.
Yeah, so let's look at some of these other kids, because we do kind of get, after the scene, after they realize the stakes and how serious it is, Charles and Magneto start training their X-Men to get them ready. And this is kind of where we start really seeing the potential of these characters come out. We start getting to spend a little more time with these characters.
My stepfather took the possibility of nuclear war quite seriously this way. That's why he had this bunker built down here. Thought we could use it as a practice range of sorts.
You don't think I'm going to blow through the walls?
He had this place built to withstand a nuclear bomb. I think he can handle you, Alex.
You know, when I do this, bad things tend to happen.
It's because you can't control it. It controls you. That's why we're here, Alex. That's why we're training. What you're doing is incredible. You're hitting a pitch with sound waves that have the same resonant frequency as the glass. That's why it shatters. But this, it's like any other muscle in the body. You can control it.
In each of us, two natures are at war.
Robert Louis Stevenson, Jekyll and Hyde.
Top marks. The story wasn't really about good and evil, though, was it, Hank? It was about man's animal nature and his struggle to control it, to conform.
And it's that struggle which is holding you back.
No. Jekyll was afraid of what he could be capable of.
And you are, too.
Well, if you're serious about me doing this, you might want to get back.
Right? Should I shut the door?
Yeah.
Whenever you're ready.
Oh my God.
I will teach you to control this, Alex.
You're sure that this will work? Anything is possible. I based the design.
Hank, stop talking. Come on.
So out of who's left, you've got Mystique, Beast, Havoc, and Banshee. Mystique and Beast, we've already seen some of, but this is where you really start getting to that kind of what we were discussing earlier with Mystique of like, how powerful are you? And it's a Magneto kind of, no matter what his intentions may have been, kind of implanting of you're not being used to your full potential, and there's so much more to you that you don't even realize. Just embrace it. Like, if you learn to embrace yourself, you're going to be strong. So that's kind of what you get out of her. And then I would say the next prominent character is probably Beast. And this is where you really get Charles trying to say, like, hey, you've got to stop being afraid of who you are or what you are, because it's going to be potentially the thing that it's kind of like Mystique. It's going to be the thing that saves your life. And I feel like this, and Drew, correct me if I'm wrong, I feel like this is a pretty on point kind of story that we tend to see with Beast. You've got this intelligent person who's pretty docile, but his abilities can let him really go wild. And it's kind of this Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde, and they even mentioned this, that he plays of,
Yeah,
you don't need to restrain yourself.
Yeah. I love it. Yeah, just that man and bestial nature, the conflict with man and beast, and I'm actually having elements like that in my Unholy Nightmare series. And I do love that. And yeah, that's very much the character Beast, and if you know anything about the Beast, if you watch the X-Men the animated series, whether it's the new one or the old one, or read the comics, he's very much that. He is the blue furball, he is the genius, but at the same time, he can let it out. He is an out full-on beast. He can fight, he can attack, but he maintains that control, and it's cool seeing him have that develop that control, but also lose it at the same time. Especially a little later on in the hangar. I love that scene where he chokes Erik. I love it.
Right, and his dynamic with Mystique and how they kind of connect like that. Also, can we talk about how they got cock blocked big time? they were gonna kiss, and then that never happened. Yeah.
Well, and then he shoots himself in the foot later, both literally and physically in some ways, because he develops this quote unquote cure that we were kind of talking about previously, where he has the chance to have his appearance look normal, have Mystique's appearance look normal. And Magneto's already kind of gotten enough in Mystique's head that she's uncertain if she wants to do it. But he says this line where he's like, which I think, it's honest, it's the truth. And he's like, no one's ever going to accept you. No one's going to think you're beautiful in the blue skin. No one's going to love you this way. And for her, like, that is damaging because it's someone saying no one's going to love you for who you are. And that for her is like the I'm out, I'm not doing this, but also changes her relationship and dynamic that she has with him. And is what leads him to have his transformation, because he goes for it and his serum isn't as foolproof as he thought.
Right.
I mean, as a woman, I would pick Fassbender over the other one anyway.
Oh, for sure. Look,
in Mystique's point of view, I'm just saying.
I didn't say this earlier, but even that scene early on when he's in the hotel room, I was like, okay, he's kind of hot. Like, I get it.
Yeah. Yes.
Come on, he's Vaughn. He's James Bond. Come on.
Well, it's interesting because we've always had Magneto as an older gentleman, right? An older guy, and now we have a young badass, or 007 over here, or 008. Yeah. So I would watch a movie with just Fassbender as Magneto every day of the week. I would just give me that 2 hours. So
now
I agree. I'm there.
I will say, out of the next two X-Men we're going to discuss, I'm curious to see, which we kind of got an answer from S.H.I.E.L.D. He said Alex Havoc. But I was going to say, like, who, at least when you guys were watching this, who were you more interested in between Havoc and Banshee? Because I would have said Banshee. I feel like, I would say.
Yeah.
Really? Banshee was a weirdo.
He's my favorite. Yeah. He's my favorite X-Men of all time. Banshee is my all-time favorite.
Really? Like, even in the comics and stuff? Wow.
In the comics. Yeah. Banshee has the most,
I have to see
in my opinion, he has the most badass moment in the X-Men comics, in my opinion. And where he actually, there's a moment where he saves the X-Men. He knocks out a fucking volcano with his voice. And it's drawn by John Byrne. It's a beautiful issue. And you just see him like sweating profusely, just saying like, I got to give it all I've got that's left of my voice. I got nothing left. The volcano explodes. He saves Japan and the world and everything, but he lost his voice. He couldn't talk for the longest time because of that.
Yeah. I think part of the reason I was excited about Banshee is because of the comics background and the stuff he does, because I was looking at this, and we know that now we know this isn't the case, but at the time the movie came out, I was looking at this as like, okay, this is one of the ways they're going to differentiate it. They're going to have Banshee in future films kind of take that Scott Cyclops role where he's like co-lead, kind of helping lead the X-Men. We never get to that. It's fine. It's fine. It's not fine.
It's because he's not mainstream. It's honestly because he's not mainstream. That's the only reason why.
He could be mainstream.
He could.
Like that. He's such a badass and such a cool character in the comics that he could have been. Now this is another character.
Green suit, his green and yellow striped suit.
And I just said he has a great moment in the X-Men animated series, the very first, like the Dark Phoenix saga or whatever, and the Phoenix Saga, I think. Yeah, and he's on the castle with Juggernaut, with Juggernaut and Gladiator. Wolverine's walking away. He's like, "Hey, somebody needs to teach you some manners, sir." And you see Wolverine stop. And it's just like Jubilee's like, "Oh God, no!" And you see him, Wolverine talking to Banshee. Banshee doesn't stand down. Banshee's just looking straight down at him. I love it. It's great.
Now, Drew, you just did something that the film didn't do. They didn't make him
Irish
Scottish.
accent?
Or is it
Yeah,
Irish?
Scottish,
It is
yeah.
Irish. Yeah.
Yeah.
Wait, because he's Irish and Moira's Scottish, right?
Correct. Yeah.
Okay. So yeah, for whatever reason, two other European characters that they didn't embrace, which I don't fully understand. I think it would have helped them stand out. But since this is your favorite character, what did you think of the portrayal of Banshee here, at least as a young kid discovering his powers and going from there?
I could go with it. You know, he was a young kid, and it was great seeing him mac on the girl in the aquarium and use his skill.
And then still get shot down.
He still gets shot down. But yeah,
I thought his character, and again, it's partially the weirdness, but I thought his character was fun. Because you know, Alex is a little more serious and like, oh, get back, oh, you know, and Banshee's just kind of a goober. But I also, it created a fun dynamic, and especially when he's trying to learn to use his abilities, and he's honed in on the fact like I can you know use my powers to shatter glass and stuff. But they're trying to get him to fly, to glide. And, you know, they push him out the window and he's just like, you know, it doesn't work. So they're trying to get him up on the satellite and they're like, hey, you got this. You know, Charles is like, you got this. Just believe in yourself. And he's like, yo, I'm going to die, man. Like, what are you doing? And he's like, no, you just, and Magneto just shoves him. He's like, we're okay. Well, this isn't happening. But he gets it, and I like seeing him fly, and I think he's got some decent scenes later in the final act, but I thought he was fun. You do have Alex kind of learning to control his powers. I'm going to go to Drew with a question, and then I'm going to have Shield talk about Alex a little bit and kind of what he liked. But did Alex bother you in this based on who Alex is supposed to be versus the timeline? Okay, agreed.
Yes, it did completely. It still bothered that's after all this time watching it, hearing who's going to be in the film to now, it's like it still bothers me Alex was in this film because for Nadia and Shield, Scott, his brother Scott, who we get introduced to two films later on, but who was in the original X-Men films, he was the first student for Xavier, the very first student, and to see that it was Alex here and this, like it still rubs me the wrong way. I don't like that, and how he uses it as like a loop, a hula hoop to get his powers out. And like it is what I don't care for that because like
are we talking about Havoc?
Yeah.
Yes. Havoc,
oh, okay.
Havoc,
I didn't know his first name was Alex.
Alex Havoc. Yeah, but because in the comics he can use his hands and everything else, but like seeing him use his chest as like a hula hoop, or whatever, it's like whatever. I guess it works.
Yeah.
Well, and for somebody who doesn't know him from the comic books, I could see it working, but I could understand if you are a X-Men purist as yourself, Drew, that would have a problem with it because of the abilities. Yeah.
And isn't Alex supposed to be younger than Scott?
Yeah, correct. Yes, Alex was like I think 3 or 4 or 5 years younger than Scott.
Yeah. He's Scott's younger brother.
Yes,
he's supposed to be in the comics, and in the films they make him the older brother. It was just weird, but it's not even so much that they did that. It's that there's so much lore with the Summers family. There's so many characters that aren't in the films that are in comics and everything that it's like you've already ruined that from ever happening, and they're relatively interesting stories to tell.
Yes, their dad's a space pirate. Come on, dad's a space pirate.
Of course, there. It's just for me that was kind of disheartening to see that kind of just got taken off the table immediately, and it's like, oh. Okay, I guess. But Shield, you mentioned that you liked Alex, and I do like Alex. I think he's a fine character. I think he's got a they did some fun stuff with his powers. I will agree with Drew. I didn't care for that, but I like the idea of he couldn't control his powers, and really needed help with that. But what did you like about Alex, and what stood out for you?
Well, he was kind of an a-hole when they first meet him, but you know to me his character grows and improves. He realizes that he has a lot of power, but he can't control it. He has a lot of fear because of that, which kind of awesome is what makes him a dick. And then once he learns to control his power, he becomes like a better person. Also, he interacts with Hank more because he's making his like power suit or whatever, so he can focus it. I don't know. I liked him. I mean, Banshee was a good character. I just liked Alex more. I liked maybe it was his power set. Nice. The whole I'm gonna fly with sound coming out of my mouth was kind of weird.
Fair.
But I think it works better in the comics than it did in the movie.
That's fair. I can accept that. The last scene I want to touch on before we move into the third act and kind of the big fast-paced battle of all this is the Magneto gets some training here too. And this is where you get to see even more of Charles and Magneto's relationship. But Magneto's like, I want to be tested, shoot this gun at me. And Charles is like, I'm not shooting a gun at you point blank. And he's like, well, I can stop it. I just want to be tested. And Charles is like, then that's not testing yourself. Let's find the man that couldn't get the submarine out of the water. That's testing yourself.
See that? Try telling it to face us. I believe that true focus lies somewhere between rage and serenity. Would you mind if I... What did you just do to me? I accessed the brightest corner of your memory system. It's a very beautiful memory, Erik. Thank you. I didn't know I still had that. There's so much more to you than you know. Not just pain and anger. It's good, too. I felt it. And when you can access all that, you'll possess a power no one can match. Not even me. So come on. Try again.
I was like, I've got chill bumps. Like, this is great. This is why these two men, not in a gay way, but this is why these two guys love each other and care for each other the way that they do. Because it's like the whole time they've been together so far, it's just been support. And you've got this just brotherly type relationship with these two looking out for each other, but still not recognizing while they're on the same path, their ways of getting there are going to be very different. Shield, did this scene connect with you in any way?
Yeah, I thought it was a very good scene. I thought it was one of the better scenes in the movie. Honestly, it really showed you into the character of both of them. Gave you a better understanding of their relationship, and it was a cool scene. The way it was shot and how it was acted and everything was really good. So, yeah, I think it was one of the better scenes in the entire movie.
Nice. Drew or Nadia, did you guys have anything you wanted to add for this moment?
Again, it just shows to the chemistry between the two actors. We're getting these pockets of this relationship, and it feels again that they've been brothers, comrades together for a very long time, not just met for a couple of weeks.
Yeah,
and it only strengthened their bond together. That scene, which was
absolutely. Earlier when we first started this, I talked about how prequels are difficult because is it compelling to tell the story of how teams get formed? And I said I think this movie does something a little different, and I think this tells the story of why. And it made it more hey, these X-Men got formed, specifically Charles and Erik's roles but you get the why element, you get the character element, not necessarily the plot element, and that's what makes this feel different than, oh, here's the story of how this crew got together. But more so why they got together and why they worked together, and for me, like, that kind of got solidified in the scene and kind of carried through. But moving into the final act of the film, you know, this backdrop of the 60s kind of moves out of just being a backdrop and just being an atmosphere. And they really kind of tie in plot elements. You've got the whole Cuban Missile Crisis that gets brought in. And this is part of the pitch that was given to Matthew Vaughn, the director, to make him want to sign on. But you've got the Americans, you got the Russians. The Russians are you know, going to put missiles in Cuba. America said, hey, if you cross this line, we're going to war. We will attack you. And that's what's happening. And for the film, it's Shaw that's kind of, you know, organizing this whole thing. This is one of the things that I don't like. You don't ever fully understand why, unless he's like, hey, if they're blowing each other up with nuclear power, I'm going to be unstoppable. But that's not articulated.
Well, okay, so I'm going to stop you right there real quick, Josh, because it was asked earlier, like, about the origins of the mutants and the X-Men and all that, but it's told in dialogue, I think, here in this scene, that Shaw believes it's the atom, it's the nuclear age, the nuclear technology. That's what probably created the mutants, and with a nuclear war, that will only empower them more. That will create more mutants and keep them alive because they're already children of the atom. Because that's what the X-Men are. X-Men are the children of the atom.
Right. That's fair. I do remember that now that you said that. Because I do remember that Children of the Atom line. Okay. Makes more sense now.
That's his theory. Hey, comic books.
But you've got this whole, you know, thing going on, and it's like, are the Russians going to cross the line or not? And you see that Azazel has attacked a ship, and that ship is just kind of like full steam ahead with no one running the ship. And the Russians decide, hey, we're not going to do this, back off. And it's not backing off. It's not happening. So they kind of play their hand. They reveal themselves. Charles uses a Russian soldier to fire the missile to stop the one ship that's, you know, full steam ahead. That forces Shaw and his lackeys to kind of expose themselves. Then it becomes a battle between the X-Men and the Hellfire Club, for all intents and purposes, which exposes mutants to the entire world. Like, everyone is now becoming aware that these mutants exist, and we get a decent action scene with these characters. So I kind of want to talk on this because, in general, I think it's a better third act than what we got in Captain America: The First Avenger. It was a little more well planned, a little more strategic. I do think it's fast paced, but you get a lot of fun stuff with the heroes. So for this third act, were there any action scenes that you guys thought stood out for you, that you enjoyed, or no?
I'll go with definitely SR-71 Blackbird. I love it because for me, I don't know Showball what he thinks on the Air Force aircraft, but for me, when I was in the Air Force, I did a report on the Lockheed Martin SR-71 Blackbird. To me, to this day, I think it's the most badass plane, the aircraft the Air Force ever had. And I love seeing it in action, and I love its roots to the X-Men. It was their first ship. It was their first aircraft. And so I love seeing that in action, and I love all the stuff in SR-71 Blackbird in the air, the stuff they were doing. I thought I really enjoyed that.
Yeah. As far as development for that aircraft in real life, it was developed in the 60s. So that part's not comic book out there. Vertical takeoff and landing and having all kinds of seats and doors open up on the bottom you can jump out of. That is. But
yes.
Yeah, but it's cool, and it's iconic X-Men. The SR-71 Blackbird. But I mean, come on, it had Michael Ironside in it. So
yeah.
So that right there already stepped it up. Plus, I was thinking about that just now when you said Xavier used that Russian sailor he like mind controlled him to shoot the missile. He totally boned that guy because as soon as he came out of it, they're like, "What are you doing?" And they're like, "Take him to the brig."
So,
yeah, that guy's.
And he's like, "What? What did I do?"
Yeah.
Double tap.
Didn't even realize what he did.
Yeah.
But this whole last battle thing is pretty chaotic on the screen. So it's pretty interesting.
it was chaotic, but I didn't mind it. I would say some lowlights for me were, again, Angel was just a waste of space. She looked terrible. It looked like they had her on wires, just swinging her around. Like there's no Zoe Kravitz had no body movements to make me think, oh, you're actually flying. She just stuck in a pose and then would spit her stupid fireball things, which
it felt like she got cast just because of her family
her
name.
looks. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Her
No,
look, yeah.
they could have found somebody that looked just as good or better than her easily.
Yeah.
I didn't understand the whole little like acid drops so she can fly but also shoot acid.
Yeah, that's part of her power.
Yeah, they never fully really go into huge detail in the film. In the comics, again, not a great character. I don't know why they picked her here. I enjoyed the Banshee going into the water.
I did too.
Using, like, a sonar type thing. I was like, oh, that's where he's kind of cool. He really didn't do much after that. The Azazel Beast fight I thought was good, but I feel like Azazel would have kicked his ass personally. I would have liked to have seen pretty much the entire X-Men fighting Azazel, and then like
could he have been a villain on his own? For the movie?
I don't think so. 'Cause I don't think character-wise he's as interesting enough, but I think he's enough of a physical threat that if you had like Banshee and Havoc and Beast and Mystique, who does nothing this entire third act, if you had all of them trying to stop Azazel, I think it could have been really entertaining because they take Riptide out like in a heartbeat. Like he steps out of the plane and goes to steps out of the submarine and goes to do his little tornadoes, and Magneto's like eonk and just knocks him out. But for me, the real captivating thing here is strictly Magneto going after Shaw. Because you've got some great exchanges with him here. You kind of have Shaw re-articulating again, like, hey, I actually didn't believe in what the Nazis were doing, but I think what came out of it is not a bad thing, meaning what came out of it with Magneto is not a bad thing, and kind of putting this idea of power out there. And you start to see how similar both Magneto and Shaw are, almost kind of setting this like, okay, now we're getting to where you're going to see the differences between Charles and Erik, and you're going to see the similarities of Shaw and Erik.
But then we get that one little thing that Erik tells him, one little thing that separates him. You killed my mother, and that
you killed my mother.
I don't want to hurt you, Erik. I never did. I want to help you. This is our time, our age. We are the future of the human race. You and me, son. This world could be ours.
Everything you did made me stronger. Made me the weapon I am today. It's the truth. I've known it all along. You are my creator.
No, Charles!
Are you okay?
Moya, be quiet. I can only control this man for so long.
Sorry, Charles.
Erik, please, be the better man. You haven't.
But I don't trust you.
Erik, there will be no turning back!
No!
Charles!
Don't do this, Erik!
If you're in there, I'd like you to know that I agree with every word you said. We are the future.
But unfortunately, you killed my mother. This is what we're going to do.
No. Please, Erik, no.
I'm going to count to 3, and I'm going to move the coin. 1.
Please, Erik.
and he's getting what he spent this entire film that he's wanted to do. He's going to kill the man that killed his family. And we get to see it. And how does he do it? He uses a coin. So Shield, what were your thoughts on this scene, and what did you think about how he decided to kill Shaw?
I thought it was cool how he did that. He'd been saving that coin for years just for that purpose. Although, he did it really slowly.
Yeah.
I thought he was just going to shoot it through his skull pretty quick, but nope. He just slowly pushed it through. So
it was very clear he wanted him to suffer. And
right.
Yeah. And then Nadia, they had like a co-thing going on, because at this point, Charles is in Shaw's mind as this is happening. So he is not only witnessing it, but to a degree, like feeling it, even though it's not his physical body feeling it, he's feeling the emotion of Shaw feeling it. What did you think about that?
I thought it was great. It brought back how dark these comics and these storylines can get. Because we went from, in the beginning, something similar to it, right? Because in the beginning, you also have the background of the experiment room while he's sitting there too. So that's pretty dark alone as well, the setup. And now we go through meeting the X-Men, and it's a little campy. We get, the montages and all this stuff. And now we get to this ending, which is pretty dark. That's a very brutal way of killing someone.
Oh,
so
yeah.
I like the balance of it between the three acts.
Agreed. And one of the things for me that I felt like this scene established is that Erik has now reached a point that he's not going to fully be able to come back from. And it's the whole reason Charles has been trying to get him out of killing. And he even says early in the film, like, hey, killing Shaw is not going to change anything. It's not going to, your world is still going to be your world. Your reality is still your reality. But for Erik, it's just what needs to be done. So he does it. But that is like the rift that happens between those two. And then, as much as you might think, oh, okay, well, this is the end of the film, it's not. Now you're getting the setup of what we tend to know with the X-Men of you've got society that is now looking down on the X-Men, or mutants, I should say. But yeah, Shaw gets killed. Erik comes out. He makes a statement like, hey, this is a different platform now. We are now facing a different reality with the world, and they're not going to accept us. And it's the antithesis of what Charles was trying to get to. And Charles, you can tell Charles doesn't want to believe it, because Charles' standpoint is, we just saved the world from a nuclear war. But Magneto's right, because he tells Charles, tap into their minds, see what they're thinking. And that's when they discover both the Russians and the Americans are being told to fire on the mutants and just completely wipe them out.
Take off your blinders, brothers and sisters. The real enemy is out there. I feel their guns moving on the water. Their metal targeting us. Americans, Soviets, humans. United in their fear of the unknown. The Neanderthal is running scared, my fellow mutants. Go ahead, Charles. Tell me I'm wrong.
Commander, this is X-Ray Bravo 70. Respond, over. The beach is secure. Call off the attack.
The beach is targeted and ready to be fired upon, sir.
Stand by.
Standing by, sir.
Приказ. Открыть огонь по берегу.
Hello? Hello?
Fire. Огонь!
So you get that dynamic. You get the fun kind of back and forth with the missiles. But really, this is just the setup of the divide between Charles and Erik really becoming Magneto. And I guess the thing that I really want to ask is, who do you think is right? Do you think Charles is right, or do you think Magneto's right? And I'll go with Senor Drew first.
And it's tough, because I really think that Magneto represents the angry young man perspective on things, whereas Charles represents the older man, the wiser older man perspective of things, the peaceful approach, and Magneto's just that by force approach. And there are days when I feel like I have the Magneto approach, but then I come back to come back off the ledge, and I'm like, no, there's a better approach to this. There's a better way, and it's the Charles Xavier way. It depends on my day, but more often than not, I like to think I go with Charles Xavier, but there are days where I feel like I'm Magneto.
Yep. Shield, what about you? Where do you think you fall on that mindset of who's right, Charles or Erik?
Well, I think that that Erik has experienced through his life experiences, he's kind of done trying to compromise with people on things, and he knows what, like, if a government is out to get the mutants, he knows how that can end. He's experienced that firsthand. So I don't think he wants to really, A, he doesn't have any empathy for it. B, he doesn't really want to take any chances with it. So in his mind, he knows it might not be the most good thing to do, but it's the right thing to do. And then I think obviously for Charles, he wants to live in a world where they're not constantly at odds with regular people. He has a vision of being able to live peacefully, integrated with normal people, and also to use their powers for good to help people. Like you have a disaster or something happens, or it's comic book world, so alien invasion or whatever. They can use their powers, and that's what they do in the comics as well. Is they use their powers for good, even though there is
used to.
conflict. Yeah.
Oh god, don't even.
I'm talking like the old stuff.
Yeah, the good times. Yeah,
we're talking real X-Men comics. Drew, take your fanfic crap and go somewhere else.
Oh no.
But yeah, that's my thoughts on that.
I'm a little opposite of Drew. I feel Charles is the naive optimism of what the world, like how he thinks this is how the world should work, where Erik is the realist and he knows this is how the world actually works. So I am # Team Magneto all the way, 24/7. Get out of here, humans.
Get out of here, humans. I'm going to actually side with Nadia on this one. I think
what?
Yeah. Whoa. I think Magneto, but hold on, because I've got a antithetical statement to this. I think Magneto is the realist. I think he understands that they will always be persecuted. I think what Magneto doesn't understand is the cause and effect that he plays in this. So I don't think he understands the full extent of what his actions do to create the world that he's expecting. And the only thing I would say against that as well is if it's not him, it's going to be somebody else. And people will always fear what they don't know and they don't understand. And him having that mindset and saying, they're always going to fear us, they're never going to understand us, and knowing that when people act out of fear, they don't make good decisions. So I do think in this moment I would wear that Magneto was right t-shirt. As terrible as it is, I do think he was right. Now, I think that to create a better world, you have to strive to make a better world. And that's where Charles comes into play. And if you didn't have him doing that, I think it would just be a really shitty world. So that's where I land. We're going to kind of wrap things up real quick and give our overall thoughts and score the film. Before we get there, is there anything else anyone wanted to touch on concerning the movie?
that awful end cut scene with Magneto in his full costume that
Where
looks
he-
like Spirit Halloween purchased
Oh,
costume.
It-
It does. It does. I mean,
Oh.
I get it. The next movie, it looks way better. But
It
that
looks way
end,
better.
it looks horrible. It just yeah.
Yeah, this is they tried really hard to go comic book accurate, and it just felt strange. And maybe it's because they knew this costume was only going to be in like a 20 to 30 second clip. So they didn't put as much money into it as they potentially should have, but it just
He looks
looked
so upset in it too. I'm looking at a photo of him in it, and he's just straight arms, and he just looks so upset. He's like, "All right, guess let's get this over with."
he was probably like, we just did a film, such kind of deeper moments, and then I'm ending it in this. Are you serious right now? But
It
yeah.
looks
Also,
horrible.
setup. If there were ever any clarity that they either didn't have plans for what they wanted to do, or the fact that what they did for Days of Future Past was so last minute, that final scene sets it up. Because there's so much setup at the end of this film for the next movie, and literally like none of it comes into play in the future. So, all right, we're gonna go.
I did have a quick question.
Oh shit! Sorry, go ahead.
So, Charles takes one in the back, and that's how he winds up in the wheelchair. Is that comic accurate? I thought he just could never walk.
No, he could walk. He could walk, but then he lost his ability to walk. I honestly forget. I think he was with Meg. Okay. So according to the original lore, he was with Erik in a hospital. They worked together in a hospital, and they knew each other, and they were helping a certain female patient. Then I think the hospital got attacked by this angry battalion, this angry mob that recognized Erik. And Xavier lost the use of his legs. I think either around then or when he fought the Shadow Master. It's nebulous when he lost the use of his legs, but it was not via a bullet from.
Okay, so he had like his back broken or something in a fight, or
yeah, I think it was through a fight.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, it's either when it was with he was with Magneto when they got attacked in the hospital, or it was against the Shadow King. Because I forget when exactly it was, but yeah, he could walk, but then he lost the use of his legs. But it was not through a bolt.
Okay. And he just lost his hair just because he got old?
No, he was always bald.
Oh, really?
I think he was always bald, and yes.
I didn't know if that was like something happened to him, or he just naturally went bald. Or
no, I think he was in the comics. He was always bald, and
yeah, I remember that. I remember from what I read, he was always in a wheelchair, and he was always bald. I just wasn't sure if what they depicted in the movie is what actually happened to him or not.
Yeah, it looks like there have been a couple of different depictions of how he lost his ability to walk in the movie or in the comics. Because I just pulled it up, and there is the reference to what Drew was talking about, but there's also, I guess, a reference to Juggernaut when he got his powers and a rock crushing Charles.
When they were in the service together.
Yeah. So for me, it worked. I didn't mind this because it kind of put Magneto in a situation where he has some blame for Charles' situation, and kind of plays into how their relationship is in the future, where they are still friends and respect each other to a degree, even though they both approach things very differently, but also why they won't fully go after one another. Like, because you'll see that they never really try to completely stop the other. They've got that hesitation that's there because of their history, which I like and respect.
Is that hesitation still going on in the comics?
Nope, they're living on Orgy Island, where they're all in love with each other. Yeah. It's not good right now. X-Men are in some very dark times.
I'll stick with my indie horror comics. Thank you.
Yeah. It's bad. Don't read current X-Men comics. And if you like current X-Men comics, what's wrong with you? What's wrong with you?
Pretty much.
All right. So just a reminder as far as grading this movie, and I think, for Captain America: The First Avenger, we were all roughly in the same patch of where we graded this. I think we're gonna be pretty different here. But just a reminder that 1 means you absolutely hated the movie, 10 means it was the best thing ever, and 5 is average. So if you give the movie like a 6 or 7, it's not a bad score. Anything above a 5 is a positive score. But I want to hear from y'all and see what you guys think overall of the film, what you think worked but didn't work, and what would you rate it. And does anyone want to go first? And if not, I'll probably throw it. Oh, Nadia, go for it.
I'll give it a 6. It's an average.
Okay.
It's not bad. But it's not fantastic. Like
Right.
I would love for them to actually dive really more deep into mutant lore instead of just basing it off what normies know. Like really kind of pull out those fun dark storylines. But it's fun. I thought I really liked Magneto. I really enjoyed his character arc. Again, I could deal without this version of Mystique, and I could deal without whatever her name is, Pixie Angel, whatever her thing. And it could, to be honest, the Act 2 could be edited down quite a bit, just a little bit. It just felt like the 2 hours felt like 3 hours to me rewatching this film. It dragged. The pacing was just so many multiple storylines going at once, and I could see why they didn't know if there was a reboot or a sequel or requel or whatever they want to call it. So, like, bring it down a little bit. But yeah, I give it an average, like 6.
Cool. Drew, what would you rate this?
I'm going to give this an 8. I honestly believe that this film, when you're looking at the whole X-Men film as a whole, including all the Wolverine films, Deadpool films, X-Men First Class and Days of Future Past, in my opinion, are the 2 best X-Men films. And this one, I had so much fun watching this. Michael Fassbender and James McAvoy are mesmerizing on the screen. Kevin Bacon is great as a villain in this. Like, he's truly, this is one of his best roles I think he's ever done, in my opinion. And it's great seeing them actually fight a mutant villain in this who's actually a legitimate threat. Some of the characters were kind of lame, I agree, and Zoe Kravitz had no business being in this film. But I enjoy it. Every time I watch this, I always have it on. I don't turn it off. I have so much fun with this. I love the time period. I love the actors. I love a majority of the characters, and I love the fight scenes. There's a whole lot more to like and love than I didn't like to this. I had more fun watching this than Captain America. I thoroughly enjoy this. This is a high recommend for me.
All right, Shield. Where do you fall on the scale?
I'm kind of hovering over a 7 on this. It had some good acting. The story was decent. The plot didn't have a bunch of huge holes in it or anything like that. For the most part, it was cast well. I do agree with Nadia. There were certain portions that could have been edited down, and honestly, a whole bunch of different. They should have done either different characters with some of the junior mutants, or they should have just cut them out of there, because they really didn't add anything. I also think that some of the fight scenes were pretty good, like when they were invading the CIA base, killing everybody in there. But there were other times when I think they could have gone with a little more comic book action, superhero, you know what I mean? Like pitting them against each other, having more fights and stuff. Because to me, probably the best scene of any of the X-Men movies is when Nightcrawler attacks the president. I saw that. I was like, this is what a movie really is. This is a superhero movie here. It wasn't just a bunch of guys going bam, pow. I mean, he was just burning through that place. It was awesome. So I was hoping of a little bit more kind of stuff like that. We saw a little bit of it with Azazel, like dropping people and stuff and whatever, but it wasn't quite where I wanted it to be, I think. And then, as far as like rewatching this, I could probably go a few years without seeing it again. But it's not a bad movie.
I will agree with you. I don't think it's a bad movie. As far as scoring this, I'm actually going to kind of side with Nadia. I was thinking this is a 6 out of 10. And it's interestingly enough that Drew mentioned he enjoyed this more than Captain America: The First Avenger, because I'm the opposite. I enjoyed Captain America: The First Avenger more. And for me, what I really think it comes down to is a couple of factors. I think Cap, in a lot of ways, resonated with me more, especially from a heroic standpoint and what it means to be a hero and having that heart. And I think the heart of that film just connects with me more, that it inspires me more. Therefore, I feel warmer to it. But I think there's a ton of great stuff in X-Men First Class. We've talked about Michael Fassbender and how excellent he is. We've talked about James McAvoy and how he kind of meets on that same level. And Drew just mentioned Kevin Bacon and the performance he pulled, and I completely agree. All three of those performances for me just knock it out of the park, and they really make this a worthwhile film to watch. But for me, I think there's a lot of small issues that don't ruin the film for me, but kind of hold it back. I'll agree with the pacing. That first hour for me felt like a slog watching it this time. It was a little hard for me to get through. And again, I will admit I may have been tired. That may have played into it. But for me, it didn't really feel like the film started until after the first hour. So if we could have cleaned some of that up, I would have been a little happier. And I felt like some characters got wasted. So for me, we spent the first hour to an hour and a half setting up Mystique as a prominent character, then did nothing with her in the end, other than have her choose Magneto's side, which we knew was coming. I thought White Queen was kind of ill-serviced, and that for me was another zinger. And I good moments, some great moments, but it just didn't fully land. And the benefit of doubt that I'll give this film is they wrote the script in like 3 weeks. So
it was a quick turnaround.
Considering that,
from script to movie, it was less than 2 years, and they had no time for marketing, no time for toys, any of that stuff. It was just straight to film. But we got to get this out. It's like, what the hell? Are you kidding me?
Because I think it was wild. I think it was a licensing thing that if they didn't get something out, they weren't going to get to keep the license. And Fox realized, like, hey, this is a license worth keeping. I know that they. Go ahead.
I read that they really also didn't care about continuity with the other films because, again, like you were saying earlier, Josh, they didn't know what they wanted to do, if it was going to be a reboot or a sequel or whatever. That's why we have some continuity issues with the other films with this.
Right. I tend to refer to this as the new 52 problem. They're rebooting, but there's so many things that they know are so good that you can't just nix it. So it's there. So then you're like, okay, so is this a reboot? Is it not a reboot? You're keeping this. And like, this is still like, the whole opening scene with the gate at the concentration camp. Clearly a lift. Mystique's look, clearly a lift. Like if they were going to do a reboot, I would think they would have gone with the the white with the skulls or the black kind of like sports bra. They could have done some other things, but it seemed like they were kind of toying with the ideas. But it is what it is. But pulling together a script that was this strong within 3 weeks, and I get some of it came from other scripts, but that's a hard feat, and there are 6 writers tied to this. So having something that's this
got credit. There are more. Those are the 6 that got credit.
So 6 writers that got credit, pulling together a script within 3 weeks, and making it this cohesive. Hey, good job. But for me, I just felt like overall I enjoyed Captain America more than I did this. That's why I gave it the 6 instead of the 6.5 that I gave Cap. But good film. I'm glad we've got it. And I'm glad that we kind of incorporated it into this rotation, because even though it stretches, it's kind of fun to think of the dynamics of what took place in the 40s with Cap versus where we are now, in the 60s in this time period. And you still have some loose ties of maybe some Nazi experimentation and things. Like for me, it's a fun headcanon to try to pretend like it's all kind of taking place
in the same universe.
In the same universe. So why not, right? So yes, that is our show. Thank you for tuning in. Make sure you chime off in the comments. Let us know if we're right. Let us know we're wrong. Are Naughty and I wrong for giving this a 6? Is Drew right for giving this an 8? What were your favorite parts? Let us know, because peeps, there are dark days ahead of us. since we are going in chronological order, the next film, we might need to be drunk for this one. The next film is sadly Captain Marvel.
Oh no!
So Josh, I have never actually watched this film. I've never seen this.
I might be on vacation that week, so you guys can just.
Oh no, this film needs it's just review.
No. It wouldn't be me. It would be Josh, not me.
It needs to have a fair and balanced review, and then we'll tell you why it's a bad movie.
I hate that movie so much. I'm still mad at Marvel for tricking me into seeing that.
Actually, I do have a lot of thoughts on the movie.
I do as well.
The character.
And I think the fun thing that we can have out of that conversation is going to be the comics aspect and what they potentially could have done with the film that they didn't do. And I'll bring Drew into that.
I had to hear about that for weeks because I live with the Marvel Encyclopedia about how bad they fucked up Captain Marvel.
Right, yeah.
And now I got to watch it and then have him go off again. Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank
there you go. You got to rip that Band-Aid off. Yep.
Rip it off.
He just opened the door and he just went, what? Captain Marvel?
Yeah.
We might have to have a Chris cameo where he just says everything he hates and then walks out. So
the bottom line is they did that character dirty.
They did Carol Danvers dirty.
Yeah.
So. Anyways, we hope you enjoyed these first two ones, and there'll be one bad film to get out of the way, and then we carry on with pretty much.
And then we're doing Dark Phoenix after that, right?
No.
Which Dark Phoenix? There's two of them.
The next X-Men film we will do is actually going to be X-Men 2000, which just bear with me because Dark Phoenix changes the lore. So to me that gets into multiverse time jumping, which puts it later on in the thing. We're going through. I know. The math isn't mathing. Well, you have to. Yeah, the math isn't mathing, but. Just we'll trust the process. But yeah, next month is unfortunately Captain Marvel. So we might be a little drunk and we might have our fun first bash session of a film. And we might challenge ourselves to see how many positive things we can say about Captain Marvel. But until then,
Drew, if you like this movie.
Oh, I don't think he will because I know him well enough. But it's gonna be funny to get his first perception on it. So anyways, thank you for tuning in. Please like the video. Please share the video. We're trying to grow our audiences. And hey, I'm going to have everyone's information down in the bottom. So if you want to find them, you can. And Nadia has her own channel. So you should go check out some of her stuff because she covers a ton of things. And she's kind of putting a superhero focus for me for this show. But she branches into everything and she likes to focus on horror. So a lot of good stuff there. But we will see you guys next month for the next episode of Marvelous Monday. Until then, don't cry too much about watching Captain Marvel again. All right. Good night, everyone.